Coming up on UGTV. A special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting tonight. I'll now call this meeting to order. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Roll call. Roll call. Walters. Here. Philbrook.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kane. Markley.
Here.
Holland.
Here. This evening, the invocation is being given by Reverend Tony Carter of Faith Community Church. Please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's bow our heads. God our Father, we're thankful for this day and for all of the many blessings and challenges that come along with it. We ask that you would guard us and guide us and lead us in the right direction, that we might serve your people well. In the name of Jesus we ask and pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'd like to ask the clerk now if there are any revisions to tonight's agenda.
Yes, Mr. Murray, blue sheet has been distributed under Section 7 of the Planning and Zoning Consent Agenda. Item B1, we have additional item under the Special Use Permit Application, SP 2017-37. And under Section 10, Non-Planning Consent Agenda, we have a new item, item number 6, which is a plat regarding the Legends Auto Plan plat, third plat.
All right. Both of these are on the consent agenda. One is on the planning and zoning consent, and one is on the non-planning consent agenda. Our first portion of our meeting tonight is our planning and zoning portion. I'll ask the clerk to read the statement required by law to be read, followed by the items on the planning and zoning consent agenda.
We would like to welcome our present to this meeting of the Unified Government Commission. Members of the commission are Mayor Mark Holland, Commissioner Melissa Bynum, at-large District 1, Commissioner Hal Walker, at-large District 2, Commissioner Gail Townsend, District 1, Commissioner Brian McKiernan, District 2, Commissioner Ann Mugia, District 3, Commissioner Harold Johnson Jr., District 4, Commissioner Mike Kane, District 5, Commissioner Angela Markley, District 6, Commissioner Jim Walters, District 7, and Commissioner Jane Philbrook, District 8. As each petition is called this evening, all persons for or against will be given the opportunity to express their views. If this is the first time that a particular petition has been before this commission, the commission has 3 options. Number 1, it can approve the recommendation of the Planning Commissions with 6 votes. Number 2, it can override the Planning Commission's recommendation, but it would take 8 votes to override. And number 3, it can return the matter to the Planning Commission for further consideration, together with a statement specifying the reason for the referral back to the Planning Commission. The consent agenda is the first part of the Planning and Zoning agenda. Items on the consent agenda have received a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission. Unless there is a request to set aside an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the public, the Unified Government Commission, or staff, then the Planning Commission's recommendation on the items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Unified Government Commission at one time. I will read the list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the mayor will ask if there are any requests to set aside items from the consent agenda. This is your time to stand up and request that an item be set aside if you do not agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation. If an item is set aside, the matter will be discussed and voted upon separately. All items not set aside will be approved with the Planning Commission's recommendation. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of each petition. We remind you that there are a number of items on the agenda, and we appreciate your efforts to make your remarks as concise as possible. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. Once the petition makes their presentation, anyone for or against will be allowed the maximum 3 minutes to state your views. As you come to the microphone, please state your name and city for the record. The mayor and the commission are required to disclose contacts with proponents or opponents on any items on the planning and zoning agenda. I will ask if any members of the commission wish to disclose any contacts with proponents or opponents on any item on the agenda.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Previously had contact with proponents and opponents of SP 2017-36.
Thank you. Commissioner Bynum.
Communication with proponents and opponents of SP 2017-36.
Thank you. Commissioner Philbrook.
Yes, with both proponents and opponents of SP 21736.
Thank you. Commissioner Townsend.
Mayor, I've had contact communication with proponent of change of zone application number 3150.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson. Thank you. Commissioner Markley.
I've received email communication regarding SP 2017-36.
Thank you. I will disclose as well, I've had discussion with proponents of number 3150. All right. Commissioner Philbrook.
The list always gets longer. Sorry about that, guys. Also with zone application changes number 3149 and 3150, proponents and opponents.
Thank you. All right.
I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Change of zone applications, item number 1, 3149, John Corbin with KVC Foundation, Inc. Change of zone from C1 Limited Business District to R4 Cardin Apartment District for a facility that provides short-term residence to youth in foster care at 316 through 344 North 38th Street. Recommended for approval as a special use permit for 2 years. Item 2, 3150, Randy Kallstrom with Wyandotte, Inc. Change of zone CP1 Planned Limited District to modify the previous 2005 approval in order to provide overnight units for up to 10 people for a maximum of 10 days at 1301 North 47th Street. Recommended for approval. Special use permit applications, item 1, SP 2017-36, Frederick Avery with Averys Village. Special use permit for a youth residential facility at 6261 Leavenworth Road. Recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 2, SP 2017-50, Julie A. Ramirez, special use permit for the temporary use of land to keep a storage container at 32 North 74th Street. Recommended for approval for 1 year. Item 3, SP 2017-58, Eric Bishop, special use permit for a maximum of 12 goats at 3552 North 47th Street. Recommended for approval for 2 years. Item number 4, SP 2017-59, Monica Cabrera, renewal of a special use permit to keep one horse at 1411 North 47th Street. Recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 5, SP 2017-61, Ruby Martin with Hilltop Saddle Club, renewal of a special use permit for a trailer for monthly meetings and to keep supplies at 5025 Muncie Drive. Recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 6, SP 2017-66, Randall Van Bieber, renewal of a special use permit for 2 goats at 3415 North 63rd Street. Recommended for approval for 2 years. Vacation application number 1, RW 2017-11, Will Anderson with BHC Roads for the Board of Public Utilities. Vacation of right-of-way at 342 South Bethany Street. Recommended for approval. Miscellaneous ordinances, rezoning ordinance number 3147, an ordinance rezoning property at 4229 Swartz Road from C1 Limited Business District to R1B Single Family District. Recommended for approval. Item 2, vacation ordinance PE 2017-10, an ordinance vacating a pedestrian easement at 3928 Rainbow Boulevard. Recommended for approval. And item 3, vacating ordinance UE 2017-8 is an ordinance vacating a utility easement at 9000 Haskell Avenue, recommended for approval. Those are all items on the consent agenda.
All right, before I make a comment about the consent agenda, we do have an additional disclosure. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I also had contact with change of zone petition number 3150. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to our planning and zoning consent agenda. Would anyone in the audience tonight, staff member or commissioner, like to remove any item from the consent agenda? Any item not removed at this time will be voted on by a single vote. If you would like to remove an item, please step to the microphone at this time.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have one when it's appropriate time.
Now is an appropriate time.
I'd like to remove SP 2017-58, Eric Bishop. We've had new information since the Planning Commission meeting about this case.
Thank you. It is removed. Yes, sir.
Would like to remove special use permit application SP 2017-36 from the consent agenda.
Thank you. It is removed. Are there any other items? Let the record show no one else is moving to the microphone to remove an item. It is.
Move to approve all other items as submitted.
Second.
All right. All other items are before us. Seeing no further discussion, roll call.
Roll call: Walters. Aye. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Markley. The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
All right. That brings us to the first item that has been removed, letter B, number 1, SP 2017-36. This item is removed, and we will, the process will be this. We will have the applicant will have an opportunity to make presentation. After the applicant makes presentation, we will open up the discussion. Anyone who would like to speak for or against, I'll ask the proponents to speak, and then the opponents. You'll have 3 minutes each. At the end of each section of for it or against it, I'll ask everyone in attendance who holds that position if you would like to stand and show your support. Many people maybe came in support but don't want to speak, or came in opposition but don't want to speak. At the end of the speeches, we will allow you to stand to show the commission your position at that time. Again, you'll each have 3 minutes to make your comments. Please remember, you're not obligated to use all 3 minutes, but those 3 minutes are available to you. So I will turn it over now to the applicant to make application.
Thank you, Mayor Holland. Mayor Holland, honorable commissioners, my name is Court Kennedy. I'm the attorney for Averys Village, LLC. My address is 10990 Quivira, Overland Park, Kansas, 66210. This application by Averys Village is to take a residential facility that's been vacant for at least 3 years in the subject neighborhood and use it for a purpose that we all agree is a dire need in this community. That is, as a temporary residential placement for children that have been removed from their homes by the state due to abuse or neglect. As the staff put it in its report recommending approval, this is a facility for good kids in bad situations. When we were last before this governing body, there was no question about the necessity of this type of facility for this community. Commissioner Philbrook indicated that she had heard from KVC and others that they expressed a dire need for this sort of facility and expressed a hope that Averys Village is able to provide it. Commissioner Walker indicated he believed we need 10 or 12 of these facilities based on the numbers he reviewed. These sentiments are echoed by support letters from both KVC and St. Francis, which are the two agencies my clients will be receiving referrals from. Their letters of support expressing the dire need are in the public record in the materials. We are here today because after what appeared to be some legitimate opposition by the neighbors in the subject neighborhood, this governing body sent the matter back to the Planning Commission for some additional discussion and consideration of the first two factors to be considered. That is the character of the neighborhood and the compatibility this facility will have with the uses of the nearby properties. And on those points, this commission requested that my clients have further discussion with the neighbors, and also they asked the staff to do additional research behind the history of other facilities in the community. What we've learned since that time is that the protest petition that was filed is in fact invalid, and that the protest had more to do with and more constituted of individuals that live a half mile or even 2 miles away from this facility. We also learned that the neighbors largely are indifferent or in fact support this application. Also, an analysis of the history of the other facilities will show that my clients are just as, if not more, entitled to have their special use permit approved as these other facilities. As for the history of the other facilities in this community, the staff found that in the last 10 years, there have been 3 approvals, 2 denials, and 1 withdrawal of group homes and/or child youth residential facilities in this community as far as special use permit applications go. Of the denials, one of the denials was solely because there was a restrictive covenant filed with the Register of Deeds on the property, which prevented it from being used for a commercial purpose. It's unclear why the other denial was rendered, because those records were not available online. If a Google search of these properties show that they're all in residential facilities with absolutely no public or semi-public aspect to speak of. Now, I want to spend some time talking in greater detail about the Blue Door project and how that project is much different than my client's proposed facility. I'm going to speak on that because that facility seems to be the one that always comes up when we're having this discussion about Averys Village. Project Blue Door is located in a strictly residential community with no public or semi-public use to speak of. It was approved for 16 use, both boys and girls living together, up to age 18. And despite the fact that they submitted a fraction of the materials that my clients have already provided both to this governing body and the community. Their use does not fit within the city master plan, which designates that particular property as a public use, or I'm sorry, as a low density residential. In addition, if you look at the website for the Blue Door project, you'll see that they say they take children between ages 12 and 18, provide substance abuse treatment, and also transitional development plans, which means they offer services to children that are 18 and are about to become adults, so they help them transition out. So you see that they offer services that my client, to high-risk kids and older kids in general. Averys Village is much different. Again, my clients are seeking to provide temporary residential placement to children between the ages of 5 and 17 who have been removed from their homes due to abuse or neglect. They own a building that is in a semi-public use designation according to the city master plan. That's been a residential facility for a very long time. My clients have provided substantial information about their proposed business operations, including the programs they're going to provide, the security that they're going to provide, and also the staffing that they'll be providing, as well as their community partnerships that they've developed. Most importantly, my clients are indigenous to this community. Beverly Avery has lived in Kansas City all of her life. She's raised all of her children here. Since 1992, she's operated a licensed daycare facility, and she's been a licensed therapeutic foster parent for over a decade. Mr. Avery's come back to this community after going to college, getting some experience to start this business with his mother to meet a need that everybody agrees with. My client's facility is no different than the facilities that have been approved in the past, and is in fact no different than the facility that KVC will be up here proposing, I think, tonight, and did at the Planning Commission. I need to speak about the opposition in this case, because one of the things that the board wanted us to do is have additional conversations with the neighbors and then report back on how those went. What we found is that the opposition was really not by the neighbors largely, but by the Leavenworth Road Association. Before we really understood that, we met with that association to hear their concerns again. We met with them at least twice during the entire process, including giving them a tour of the facility. In the materials, you see something that's been marked Exhibit 6. It's public record. Our meeting minutes from a meeting that we had with the LRA on October 4th, 2017. Very detailed meeting minutes. We explained to them, as you'll see in those minutes, that all of their questions had to do with topics that are strictly regulated by the state of Kansas, either in statutes or regulations. We explained to them that before we're ever able to even operate, we have to get licensed by the state of Kansas after a very strict evaluation, and that we can't keep that license unless we meet and continue to meet all of the regulations and all of the statutes. And we explained to them that we'll be subject to yearly reviews by the state of Kansas, audits. After explaining all of that to them, and then asking them if there's anything we can do, any additional conditions they want on the permit, like licensure by the state of Kansas or anything else that they could propose, they were not receptive to anything. And it became quite apparent at that point, and after many questions, we asked them numerous times what we could do. It became apparent that the nature of the opposition is just that they don't want the facility. Based on my perception being a general distrust of my clients or these types of facilities in general. Now, when we talked to the actual neighbors, the situation was quite different, and not all the way different, but I'd like to report on that as well. Mrs. Kathleen Lidtke, who's the next door neighbor to this facility and owns the largest tract of land in the neighborhood, has actually supported this application from the beginning, but just had questions. She'll be speaking after me in support of this application tonight. Mr. Ronald Seaton, who lives across the street from her, I found out, also supports this application. You'll see in the public materials affidavits signed by both of those landowners indicating their support of Averys Village application. There's only two people that we could identify, two landowners, that are actually in protest of this petition within the 200 feet buffer zone. That would be Mr. Henry Brown that lives across the street, and Mr. and Mrs. McGill, whose corner of their property is within the 200 feet buffer zone. You'll see in the materials exhibits 9 and 10 a letter and an email that I sent to them confirming the details we discussed, the questions they had, and the information that was provided. Mr. McGill actually did not want to meet with my clients and turned them away. And when I met with them, just me and them, they explained that they just distrust my clients based on the way they came off the last time we were before this governing body. Henry Brown, we met with him after he had told me that he had met with the LRA, which was on a Monday. We met with him on a Wednesday. He had a lot of the same questions the LRA had. We again answered all those questions, this time in writing, as you can see in Exhibit A. So that brings us to the Planning Commission meeting that happened on November 13th. Again, the LRA led that opposition, organized that opposition. It was quite apparent and brought up the old, same tired concerns that had been brought up repeatedly that my clients answered over and over again. They didn't offer any information, new information, and were not receptive to suggestions by the Planning Commission of additional conditions that could be provided. Now, Mr. McGill did have a document in his hand that he purported to be an opinion of a real estate agent that he handed to Mr. Richardson that said there was that alleged there was a small net potential decrease in the value of his property down the street. But upon questioning by Mr. Richardson, it became apparent, and it's clear from the document, that the opinion wasn't actually based on any data, but was based on the assumption that this property was going to be a hangout for juvenile delinquents, which of course is not the case, and I don't know how many times my clients have to say that for that to be clear. Now, the staff did seize on that and put as an additional conditions to the permit, or recommended conditions, that number one, that this be a facility for kids that are removed from their home because of abuse or neglect, and number two, that in 2 years, they'll review it to see if it's actually become a hangout for juvenile delinquents, which of course will not be the case. With that, the Planning Commission once again unanimously approved this application. They approved it and also found that there's absolutely no compatibility issues with the nearby properties. In conclusion, this governing body knows that there are certain factors that it should consider when deciding whether or not to grant a special use permit, and that these factors are set forth by the judiciary. All of those factors weigh in favor of this application. Chief among them, the fact that we've got a recommendation of a professional planning staff, which has now recommended approval of this application twice. We've got a gain to the public health, safety, and welfare. It's fitting within the master plan, among others. All of these factors weigh in favor of the approval of this permit, especially given the well-recognized need and the track record of this government stepping up to the plate and meeting that need when there's an opportunity to do so. To deny this permit based solely on the size of the facility or what we perceive to be some incurable distrust of either these facilities in general or my clients would be wholly unreasonable. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Sir, you're welcome to have a seat. We will open up the public hearing at this time, and I'm going to ask to begin with anyone who would like to speak in favor of this petition to please speak first. Please state your name and address. For the record, it is important that you state your name and address so we can understand the proximity that you have to this project. But we will begin with those who are in favor. Ma'am?
I'm Kathy Lidtke, 6233 Leavenworth Road, KCK 66104. I know emotion plays a big part in this debate, and when I first heard about Averys Village, that foster care kids would be there, I thought, oh no, foster kids, and then I pictured in my mind juvenile delinquents. But then I decided I needed to take a step back, and I removed emotion from it. I did some soul searching and praying, and I called some friends of mine who are child advocates and got some clarification on the difference between juvenile delinquents and children in need of care. And as I've been told by the Averys, this is a children in need of care facility. I've also done some research on group homes, and I submitted this on the 13th, but I'm going to submit it again. This is from Overland Park, Kansas. They did a study for 5 years, and basically there is no overwhelming evidence to either support or refute the hypothesis that group homes have a negative impact on the quality of life in residential areas and on the value of residential property. An issue I have also is that I keep hearing people say that we don't want this in our neighborhood. We'd like it somewhere else. Well, my reaction is, guess what? We are that someplace else, because other people have rejected it, and I don't think that we should for several reasons, because these kids from Wyandotte County that have to go into the foster care, if there's not a place here, they get shipped off. And a lot of them end up in Wichita, which is 3 hours away. And if they're trying to keep in contact with their family, that's almost impossible for family to come and visit, because a lot of these children...
You have 1 minute, ma'am.
Thank you. A lot of these children are from homes where they can't afford to travel. So that, to me, is not effective or beneficial to the families, to the kids, and to trying to repair the damage that is done. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favor?
Hello. My name is John Coolidge, C-U-L-I-C-H, and I reside at 2100 North 13th Street, Kansas City, Kansas, 66104. I would like to speak on advocating for this youth home and hope to bring you a little bit of reality what may happen if these kids are forgotten, okay? I'm a 55-year-old homeless man that has lived on the streets of Kansas City for 10 plus years. I'm currently in recovery and I'm 1.5 years clean from all illicit drugs, making my transition at the Shalom House here in KCK. I stand here tonight because the urgent needs of youth transition centers. During my 10 plus years on the streets, I have encountered at least 24 youths between the ages of 14 and 19, 1% being young women. Many of these youths were drug addicted or with mental health issues and runaways discarded by their families. 90% of these families and parents had also drug issues and mental health issues as well. These kids were broken, angry, most learned how to mask their pain by the use of drugs, leaving them hopeless. I let many of these kids stay in my tent encampment outside in the woods, trying to give them hope and to show them the ropes on daily outdoor survival. Many of them were also beaten, taken advantage of, money stolen from. They hustled, they hooked, and they were bullied. A few, unfortunately, took their own lives. I tried to assist them with housing, but the youth facilities were always full with a long waiting list, leaving me frustrated and feeling helpless as well. For if I as an adult could not find help for them, then surely they felt they had no chance. These youngsters are our future, and we must work as a community to give our youth, these forgotten youth, a chance at life. Thank you. That's all.
Hi, my name is Cleo from McKinney, advocating for Shalom House, 2100 North 13th, 66104. Earlier we were debating, having a discussion about homelessness, and I sided with what's the difference. And someone said to me that sometimes people become homeless by choice. Well, I became homeless without choice. And it was probably one of the toughest things that I ever experienced in life. And when I think about a child being homeless or not having somewhere to go, it almost becomes obvious that avenues have to be made. It's without choice. We have to find some kind of avenues to help a child, because I imagine, when I think about how it was for me, to imagine what a child would have to go through, not having somewhere to call home, it's almost unthinkable. I don't even know how to think about it. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Maki Bleh, and my residence is 2100 North 13th, Kansas City, Kansas, 66104. I want you all to think, what if this was one of you all? Nowhere to stay, nothing to eat, no clean clothing, no one to love you. As my brother spoke about earlier, I'm homeless also. I was fortunate that someone was there for me, that stood by me. I want you all to think hard before you all decide about the situation the children would be in. It's hard enough for us adults. It's very hard. Just think about children. How impossible would it be for this to be passed? It's just children. If they be pushed aside, what about our future? We already have it bad enough. To be homeless and to be an adult, most people will be embarrassed. It's no embarrassment. It's just a part of life. Think about it deeply, because it's time for a change. And no one can do that but you all. Thank you very much.
Some of us are probably imagining what is the correlation between
Name and
being
address,
homeless.
sir.
Christopher Miller, 606 North 82nd Street, Kansas City, Kansas. Some of us are probably imagining what is the correlation between not having a home, being homeless as an adult, and being homeless as a child. Well, the very first meeting that I attended, I believe we talked about there were 1,400 kids out there on those streets that are homeless in the Kansas City, Kansas area. There's not very many residentials in this area. The only even remotely close residential is going to be opened by KVC. There's no other shelters that take families here. There's barely even shelters that even take men. So the closest shelter in KCK is, the closest shelter to this area is in Synergy House. So there are many, many, many young men and women out there sleeping on those streets and sleeping in their case manager's office for the first night until they can find placement. Because when you boil it down to the basics, what is the definition of a child in need of care? A basic child that is that's been removed from home for abuse and neglect. That's it. And so we have to find that child a house, a home. And if you guys have been paying attention in these meetings, Averys Village is trying to offer that home away from home, just as she did when she opened up her home with the foster homes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Jones. I stay at 2100 North 13th Street, Kansas City, Kansas, 66104. And I'm originally from Mississippi. I'm now a citizen here, and I have never seen homelessness like I've seen it here. By helping the youth, especially grown men, have a problem making it here, surviving out here, and it actually gets super cold in the winter. So for a child, it actually turns from surviving to it's you running hand in hand. With that being said, helping the youth would stop the crime rate. It would change a lot in this community. And that's actually part of the biggest problem here concerning burglaries and things like to that effect. We will most definitely be helping to have a program for them to have somewhere to go, to have somewhere, and they just not here on the street trying to wonder where their next meal gonna come from. Because it's hard for me, and I'm actually a skilled worker, you know. And with that being said, I just ask all of you to take a look at this and what's going on here. Even when you leave here and ride around here, you can see it. Bags, the backpacks on their backs, the garbage bags. The children are the future for us, and all of us have to get old. We're gonna have to get old one day, and we're gonna have to see those same kids that's doing that. Now they wanna rob you because they ain't got nothing to eat. That'll change a lot, and charity start at home. This is home. So with that being said, I'm gonna leave y'all off that.
Good evening. My name is Cordelia Walker. I live at 8701 Georgia Avenue, KCK. And I come just to speak because I have been a former planning commissioner for probably close to 20 years, and I'm no longer a planning commissioner, but I understand where you are in listening to these requests by the community, especially when it comes to something related to children and group homes and everyone. For years, I heard, I just don't want it in my neighborhood. But thankfully, I can recall many times that we did allow that opportunity to come. And listening to what these people are wanting to do there at that facility, it reminds me of something that someone recently told me who lived in Kansas City, Missouri, and they work in this area of children. And they asked me, would you be willing to open up a place because there is such a dire need? And if the children can't get into a facility where they can get what they need, then they just become worse and worse, coming out of a bad home situation and not going to someplace better. So I hope that you will consider that whenever someone gets a license to do a facility as this. I used to be a Medicare certified home health agency, and so I know what you have to go through, and that when they have their regulations, you must follow those regulations. You're not allowed to do it the way that you want to. So for this mother and son to come forward and be willing to provide this type of service in our community, they will be under very strict scrutiny by the state, and it will jeopardize their license if they don't follow those regulations. And I am positive that they will, because it is not an easy thing to get licensed. So I hope that you will consider that we can't say in every situation, not in my neighborhood, especially when there are neighbors who have spoken tonight who have preyed on the needs of these children. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Terrence Murray, and I reside at 5319 Fox Ridge Drive, apartment 104 in Mission, Kansas. I'm a student at the University of Kansas School of Medicine, and I'm excited about the difference Averys Village will be able to make in the lives of countless youth. I've spoken to fellow classmates and other students at the medical center to see many ways our training can help at this facility, in addition to volunteering and mentoring the kids. I find it amazing that Averys Village can transform a vacant building and make such a contribution to the city that would include additional jobs and a place to call home for up to 50 children at a time. As we know, and as my friend mentioned earlier, there's over 1,400 homeless youth in the area, and I'm glad that Averys Village will be able to impact these children's lives. Being a future healthcare provider, I'm excited to find ways to give back and help these children achieve their dreams the way that those before me have helped me get to where I am today. I'm grateful for the many community partners that will assist in allowing these children to grow up and experience the freedom to live their lives safely, healthy, and under the close supervision of the faculty of Averys Village and those respective supporting community organizations.
Good evening. My name is Michael Copeland. I live at 7850 Everett Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas 66112. I want to come at a different angle. KVC, Carl Valley Center, is the biggest behavioral health facility in the state of Kansas, and I worked there as a behavior tech for these kids for 9 years. So unless somebody has had that position, they don't understand. There's nobody in this room that would understand what these kids go through more than I can testify that they go through. When I first started there, we had 3 kids on the waiting list 2 of the 3 committed suicide. They were in that dire of a situation at home. Without facilities like these to oppose this this project, you are almost literally opening the door to the jail cells and for things like this to happen, and for high school dropouts. I was the closest thing to a father figure that a lot of these kids had, and it's not a hangout spot. The concerns of the opposition may be well-founded because they simply don't know. But these kids, it's so many kids that are in need of these type of facilities than there are facilities that are either willing or available or able to be licensed to open up for these children. It's the simplest things that these kids are looking for, the love. You don't understand what they go through at home. Some of us in this room are blessed to be able to have mothers and fathers and family members and grandparents to be able to steer us in the right direction, but a lot of these kids don't. And without being able to approve projects like this, it almost takes the chance out of these kids' lives to turn around and be successful. I understand that it can be a concern with it being in your neighborhood is where you reside, that's where you want to feel comfortable. But what else would happen? We had, like I said, KVC was the biggest facility that we had, and we weren't even big enough. We had to ship kids to Iowa, to Nebraska, to Wichita. It's not fair to the children because they don't have anybody to fight on their behalf. So
You have 1 minute, sir.
And I'm gonna take my seat with saying this, that if this project is not approved, I'm born and raised in Kansas City, Kansas. I love my city. I feel that it would be a monumental failure on the part of Kansas City, Kansas. Thank you.
Good evening. Broderick Crawford, 824 State Avenue, 309, Kansas City, Kansas, 66101. I stand advocating. I'm one of the partner organizations in support of Averys Village. The NBC Community Development Corporation has a long track history with working with youth, specifically at Northwest Middle School with our Snapback program. We stand readily available to assist Mr. Avery and his team in making sure that there is a space for our youth, our kids here in Wyandotte County to have a place to reside. As been stated earlier, these are good kids that have been taken out of bad situations. Why would we not want good kids to be in good situations? As has been stated earlier, the 1,400 homeless children that are in our school districts that we can identify now already are creating a struggle for those of us who are working in this community. I would ask that each of you consider very strongly who do we actually serve, our community and the children that make up the leaders that we will have, that have the opportunity to do something positive with their lives with the support of yourselves, agencies and partners like Averys Village, and partners in community organizations such as ours. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Commissioners. Crystal Watson, 8532 Spring Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, also President and CEO of the Heartland Black Chamber of Commerce. Upon the Commission Board meeting held August 31st, I received several calls from the community regarding the outcomes and comments from the Leavenworth Road Association, which bordered racial bias. In review of the meeting via video and contacting and listening to Commissioner Philbrook comments, statements, asking that the LRA and the Averys Village talk, as a community leader, I felt a responsibility and duty to contact both parties to see if I could help them come to some type of consensus. I did contact Commissioner Bynum and Commissioner Philbrook for their approval and buy-in, and there was a meeting held on October 4th. We consulted with a third-party consulting firm to record the meeting from those minutes from that meeting, and minutes were provided and they were submitted, can be submitted to the full commission if you require it, but they were also submitted to our commissioners, Bynum and Philbrook. Overall, Averys Village apologized for any misunderstandings. They attempted to compromise and offered for alternative solutions. This attempt was to no avail. As a community leader, I felt a responsibility to seek unity, particularly when perceptions indicated a racial divide. After hearing the comments from some of those who opposed the youth facility at the Planning and Zoning Commission several weeks ago, I was very disheartened to hear those comments. If the commission has been willing to allow other organizations to support displaced youth, the same consideration should be given to Averys Village. And I ask that you make that same consideration for full approval. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. My name is LaRon Thompson. I live at 7101 Verde Drive in Kansas City, Kansas. If not now, then when? If not here, then where? It is this body's duty, responsibility, and obligation to ensure that our children have a safe place to stay. Visiting the facility in which Averys Villages petitioned you guys to use as their facility to house these good children, the children that deserve a chance. It warmed my heart to see that they are not only trying to care for the lives of these children, but those individuals who are directly impacted within that neighborhood. And so because of their heart, because of their desire to see not only those children do better, but this community be better, I strongly urge this body, when your name is called, to simply say, I.
Good evening. My name is Karin Wyatt. I live at 359 Troop, KCK 66101. And I know the understanding what kids go through. I see kids every day. My life is with kids. And a kid that is homeless is a kid who don't live at home. You have parents living with other people, and they have kids. Those kids are homeless because it's not their home. They have to go to school every day. Some kids live up under bridges with their parents. But they have a chance now to live in a place where this young man is giving his time and his money and his love. And if we are our brother's keepers, we should be willing and listen to the voices of the people who are speaking because they care. And we know you have kids and you care. And you never know what's going to happen to you or your kids. But you know one thing, there would be a place for them at Averys Place. And I'm just hoping and praying that we all do the right thing.
Again, I wasn't planning on speaking, but I wanted to give my perspective. My name is Dominique Witten at 2419 North 73rd Street, Kansas City, Kansas, 66109. I'm a social worker, and right now my husband is working with the Averys as a consultant, my husband and I, for free. But I also want to give a background on who I am and what I will be willing to work with them on in the future. I worked in group homes from a volunteer to a teaching counselor, working with them directly one-on-one every day, and also as a case manager in the homes. This is in Wichita and Lawrence, Kansas. In these homes, I saw a lot of the children from Kansas City, Kansas. They would be shipped up there, and then the requirements placed on them by DCF were they still had to require to have treatment, counseling, parental visitations, go to school, and there was another of remaining behaviorally sound. These things were almost impossible in the areas where they were coming from. A lot of the Kansas City kids in Wichita, they would be waiting for hours for their parents whose tire didn't get fixed. And so that was a strike against this child, and then returning home. There was one incident where the mother called over and over saying, I'm on my way. I'm trying to get my friend to bring me. I'm on my way. I'm trying to get my friend to bring me. That child waited for almost 7 to 8 hours, and the mother never showed. That's just one instance. There's times when they have to go to counseling, but their counselors are here because they didn't want to move their counseling to Wichita, so they would have to wait for transportation to bring them 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours just to get to their counselors. And they could not switch them because it would be a hindrance to that child to keep switching their counseling. What I'm willing to work with the Averys on, if they would have me, is to help with them on their policies, training their staff, and also getting them up to code and keeping them in code with DCF, KDH&E, and all the agencies that will be supplying these children. Starting with when the children come into their doors, searching the children, making sure they're not bringing anything in, making sure that they have the right procedures for when they're going to school. Do they have a para there? Training their staff on doing the 24 hours of doing the critical incidents, daily logs, making menus, making sure that they're watchful, one staff to every 5 to 7 children. Making sure that to knowing how to be diligent when they're sitting and watching the youth, setting up activities for them so they're not just sitting in the house, and also being diligent on bedtimes, going to school, and all those things. So just knowing that he has a team behind him to help support him will be something that I am able to provide as a social worker. Thank you.
Good evening. Dion Witten, 2419 North 73rd Street, Kansas City, Kansas, 66109. That was my wife, Dominique, that just spoke. She's from Wichita, but I'm a lifelong Kansas City, Kansas resident. When I was in Wichita, I actually was a supervisor of a YRC2 it was a boys ranch. We had 4 houses on the property. Basically, my heart is in Kansas City, okay? This is where I reside, this is where I grew up, this is where my grandparents grew up, and I want to see this community thrive. And the success of this community is going to be predicated on the success of the children that reside or grow up in this area, okay? Right now, with the lack of YRC2, with the lack of child support in this area, it's not conducive for the kids to be successful. When I was in Wichita, as my wife spoke before, a child gets removed from the home in Kansas City. They go to Wichita, and trying to reintegrate that child and rehabilitate them to a level to where they can be a functional adult in a community that they're going to go back to is almost impossible. When you have to drive, when you get removed from a home, and then you drive 3 hours to Wichita, Kansas, or Salina, you're placed with certain policies and procedures that require you to have certain meetings with parents, and you have to drive back and forth between Wichita and Kansas City. And then ultimately, the kids are coming back with whatever that they received in Wichita. At the end of the day, what's best for these children is support from the community from which they came from. Any apprehensions that anybody may have in terms of the functionality of a YRC2 is regulated by the state, okay? As far as the ratio, the security, whether they run away, all of that is placed, or protocols that are placed from places higher than people that professionally, this is what they do.
You have 1 minute, sir.
So from that standpoint, it's paramount that we support it's not just about supporting the Averys, but supporting the kids and understanding that the kids are the foundation for the future of this county and for the betterment of this community as a whole. Right now, we don't have the systems in place. From what I've seen as a YRC2 supervisor, somebody that was in this industry that currently works for a nonprofit organization now, where I work with at-risk kids. If I have a student right now and I have to report on something as a mandated reporter, I have to report that, but I have to report it with the reality, knowing that this kid is going to go 3 hours away from their home and potentially put themselves in a worse situation socially than what they would experience by being up here, by being able to go into a safe environment in the area that they're at and get the help that they need within this area. So I hope you all vote for in support of the Averys. I support anybody that is about supporting kids. So you all have a blessed night. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Desiree Moniz. I'm the CEO of Avenue of Life. We're at 7th and Sandusky. I'm also a resident of KCK. I'm at 4348 North 122nd Terrace. I was approached by the Averys about 2 months ago. I've had the privilege of meeting with them over a half dozen times. So let me share a little bit about what I do in the community. I came into the community in 2013 with the nonprofit focused on community development. And I had the privilege of being called to a meeting at the school district regarding 1,400 students that we had that were homeless. At that meeting, our mayor did a call to action. And he asked, could we as leaders in this community mobilize to address the issues that we have in our city to ensure that these children make it to graduation? And nonprofits began to stack hands, and I was asked to lead the coalition, and this collective impact approach is called Impact Wednesday. By the close of last year, it had reduced homelessness by 40% in our community. However, of the number of 1,400, 200 of those children are unaccompanied youth. The 200 unaccompanied youth we have not addressed. We continue to modify the Impact Wednesday to focus on students in ways that we can be creative. If the parents are homeless, but the child is couch surfing or sleeping outside, how do we get the family into permanent housing and get the child back with their guardian? There are various ways that we're working with our unaccompanied youth, but we do have several hundred that are in our area that do not have safe housing. And so as the Averys began to meet with us, what they were asking is they wanted support from other agencies that had expertise. They wanted to know, would we stack hands with them? Would we partner with their kids with programs that we had found were effective? Would we share staff that we had that had expertise? Would we be a part of what they wanted to do to ensure that every child that came into their home would be successful? And so I do want to tell you, as lead for a collective impact arm of Impact Wednesday, we do have 23 agencies. We are in support of Averys Place. We will be actively involved with Averys Place in any way that we can use our expertise. We stand in support. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anyone else coming forward to speak in favor. I do want to offer everyone who is here and is in favor to have the opportunity to stand and show your support, whether you spoke or not. So if you're in favor of this application, will you please stand at this time and show your support? Thank you. You may be seated. I'll now open it up to those who are opposed. If anyone would like to speak in opposition to this project, please come forward at this time. Again, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Louetta Braswell. My individual address is 5202 Parkview Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas 66104. I'm here as Executive Director of Leavenworth Road, located at 6100 Leavenworth Road. I'm here both as an individual and the director. Yes, we are in opposition, not to the Averys, not to their program, strictly to the facility. And no, it's not a not in my backyard. If there was a facility in my front yard or my backyard that had some green space and some freedom for the kids to be out, I would be #1 supportive. I'm not, like I said, against Averys. We have, all of LRA members have said it over and over. It's the location of the facility. Not in my backyard, that has nothing to do with it. It is 63rd Street and Leavenworth Road. How many of you as parents would tell your kids, why don't you go outside and play in the parking lot, because that's all they have, other than the courtyard, which is not that big. If Averys would be honest with you, they will tell you that some of the speakers that have been at all these meetings in opposition, I have apologized to them for some of the statements being made. After the last planning and zoning meeting, I actually went out and hugged them both because I felt sad that they were sitting out in the cold during one of the meetings with residents. So I'm not heartless. LRA is not heartless. If you follow our website, you will see that we are for the kids. We have a lot of kids' activities. We have
You have
never
1 minute, ma'am.
we have never been considered hateful people. I have a copy of our newsletter that's going out that we are supporting one of our members that has always been very devoted to the orphanage in Croatia. As far as the tour, I would like to clarify that tour was only 3 people, and only one of us was a LRA member at that time. If they are approved and if they get their license, they will find that LRA is supportive. We have always been supportive of our people and our businesses. They will see us, they will maybe even get tired of hearing from us, but we want the kids to see that we are a helping hand and we were a watchful friend. Like I said, we have never, ever been against Averys, and
Your
it's
time
not
is
that
up.
it's
Thank
in
you,
our
ma'am.
backyard, it's the facility itself. There's a copy of our newsletter.
Hello, my name is Denise Davis. I'm at 3314 North 53rd Street, Kansas City, Kansas. I'm an LRA member and treasurer, and I'm also president of the North Wellborn Watch, so I am in the community. After many discussions, accusations, and insinuations, LRA finds herself back in front of the UG commissioners. I still oppose the proposed youth facility home at 63rd and Leavenworth Road. Let me be clear, this is not a protest against the Averys family or, quote, NIMB, not in my backyard, unquote, as a few of our commissioners have been heard saying. With me, it's always been about location, site, and facility not being an appropriate, safe place for kids on the corner of a busy intersection of State Highway 5, Leavenworth Road, and no green space for kids. At the last planning and zoning meeting, we were asked if, quote, if we couldn't at least go along and give Averys a chance and then let the state determine if all regulations are being met. In a perfect world, the state of Kansas would be able to regulate this facility. However, if you've been following the articles during the last 2 to 3 months in the Kansas City Star, Kansas has proved they have been unable to meet these demands. Kids are continually missing, and some have even died under Kansas watch. We can't count on the state to provide proper oversight. However, we should be able to count on our elected UG commissioners to vote against an unsuitable location and facility before it opens up. If Averys Village wants to open at a more suitable location or in a different facility not built in the 60s for senior citizens, they would probably get my support. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Donna Henderson Hoyt. I live at 6422 Cernich Road, Kansas City, Kansas, 66104. I'm speaking tonight as a community member, a president of our neighborhood Cernich area neighborhood group, which borders north of Leavenworth Road between 67th and 55th Street. And I'm also a member of LRA, speaking as a supporter of Lou Braswell and the Leavenworth Road Association. We will continue to stand with Lou and the LRA and all that they have done and will continue to do for our community. Many have tried to damage our reputations and our organizations, but have failed. Our community has concerns, and we will continue to have these concerns with this facility. Our elected officials have failed to listen to the community, but we are not surprised. We knew what we were up against and who we were up against. The outcome of the last planning and zoning meeting just proved everything to us. We did our homework. We met with the Averys multiple times and even had a member agree to meet with them and walk them through their numbers and our numbers to show them why we have concerns. They never responded to us until it was too late to meet and then declined that request.
When you have stories changed as often as theirs did, from meetings we had with them to hearing them speak in front of the planning and zoning and the commissioners here, our concerns became bigger, and so should yours. At the last planning and zoning meeting, we were prepared to speak to you about all 12 points that the planning and zoning committee bases their findings on. We were denied to be heard on these points, and anytime someone got up to speak, the committee members drilled, grilled, questioned, overspoke, and even made innuendos about what our community members were saying. The behavior and defensiveness of the committee was totally uncalled for and disrespectful. Your community members who voted and elected you all into office were here to speak about this project. Many of you wiggled, wrangled, and placed yourselves into this battle, and by doing so turned this into a circus and tried to accuse us of being racist.
You have 1 minute,
I'm
ma'am.
tired of this excuse, and an excuse that is just used way too often these days. The actions and speech of Ms. Watson were downright uncalled for, uninvited, and not needed between these parties. The fact is, we were here from day one against the facility at this location. We were not, nor were we ever, against the Averys. Many of us, and myself included, did not even know who the Averys were until we heard them speak right here in this room many months ago. In fact, their petition was based on their people approving them were not members from our community. Our community was here to speak. Their initial letters that were sent to our neighbors surrounding the building were never received. Again, no surprise to us. We spoke with those area neighbors and submitted a valid petition from the community. That petition was later revoked, but I can guarantee if I were to walk that community again like I did months ago, I would speak myself with every person on that original petition and have them sign it again where it would be a valid petition. Thank you.
Stan Bartley, Kansas City, Kansas. Also a co-chairman of our Neighborhood Watch Group, along with Ms. Hoyt, and a member of the Leavenworth Road Association. I'm going to continue off where Ms. Hoyt did. Our community members are or were here to speak against the facility and not against the Averys. We will continue to be against this facility. As we have mentioned, it is not a safe place, nor it is the right facility for individuals they will be taken in. We knew based on their information given to us, the information we have gathered from KVC and the state, there is a difference in the type of the children they intend to take on versus the amount of money the state they are expecting to receive for each of those children. There is a difference between the high-risk children and the children in need for care. Yet you all do not want to hear that from us or those facts between the differences of low-risk and high-risk children and the amounts they will be receiving for those based on their business model. Instead, you want to push this through and have us rely on a state agency and let them take it from there in the hands of the state. Do I need to remind you that the state cannot manage their own system currently? I know firsthand, working in an elementary school, which Donna does, for over 20 years, I see how our system fails these kids in the foster care now. And these are the same kiddos in the system that should be in a single-family home or are in a single-family home. Can you imagine 50 young youth in a group facility being overlooked? If you take one thing from this process, please know our community members spoke out against this, while the Averys' friends and families
You have 1 minute, sir.
are in favor. A majority of them are from outside are speaking in favor, are not even from our community. We, as voting individuals, will remember this when it comes time for election. Thank you.
Point of order, point of order. Please do not react. Next speaker, please.
My name is Rick Shahan, 9320 Georgia Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, and I am a member of the Leavenworth Road Association, have a business in this area. Basically, as members of the Leavenworth Road Association, it's been stated a couple of times, we remain opposed to this facility being approved as a youth residential facility. It's been alleged at various times in various meetings that we're opposed because either we don't like kids, we don't like profitable companies, or because of the ethnicity of the proponents. We want to be clear. We're not opposed because of ethnicity, not to the Averys themselves, not to making a profit, and not to finding ways to help good children in bad situations. Leavenworth Road Association does that every day. But we are opposed to this building in this location. The reasons we remain opposed are very simple. It's because of the physical and environmental restrictions of this building's layout and location. They include this being an old building built around 1965, configured to serve non-ambulatory senior citizens at a high-traffic intersection with no sidewalks, no setbacks, lack of parking, and building space limitations. In the end, we're just simply unable to see how this building can be transformed into a safe, home-like environment for the good children of our county in bad situations. Some people seem surprised that we can have a difference of views without it being related to ethnicity, age discrimination, or prejudice, but we can and we do. Yes, we're opposed because we don't think this building in this location can be made safe for the children. However, we also want it known that if this temporary permit is approved and Averys Village can ultimately meet the licensing requirements of the state, then the Leavenworth Road Association will welcome the Averys Village, their owners, and their employees to be part of the association and the different programs that are already in place. We will want them to be successful, not only because they will be part of the neighborhood, but primarily because the good children of our county in bad situations don't need to find themselves in another one.
My name's Dwayne Beth, 2937 North 64th Street, Kansas City, Kansas. I survived the slings and arrows of the planning and zoning meeting, much to the chagrin of some people probably. But I'm here to speak not just because I've been a member of the Leavenworth Road Association off and on since 1985 or about their beginnings there, but some of the things that have been said are just too absurd to even counter in 3 minutes. I gave you guys a packet today of information because when I was pointed out, I keep hearing about kids sleeping in offices. So I did some research on there and found out they don't sleep in offices because there's no place to put them. They sleep in offices because of the bureaucratic hoops they have to jump through to be placed. Now, that whole article was based on an audit in 2016 contracted by the state legislature. You have a copy of it. I summarized it for you because it's 70-some pages long. What they find out is it proves several things. There's problems with DCF oversight and contracted care providers. That's a fact. It's in the audit. It's not somebody's opinion. It also points out that our needs in our community in Wyandotte County and Johnson County exceed the need of our communities. In fact, it says we have 20% more beds than is necessary. And we're accepting kids in excess of 100 miles away. That's contrary to the fact that we're shipping kids to Wichita. We ship kids out of this area to get them away from bad influence, not because we don't have a place to put them. I'm kind of unique here. Me and the captain are probably some of the only people here that actually on the front end have taken kids away from their families. We've been told that it's heavy regulated by the state licensing and audited. That's not true according to the audit and according to what's been exposed in the media. Now, we could talk about the child in need of care, which that doesn't necessarily mean homeless kids. A kid 9 years old that commits a felony or a misdemeanor, 9 years old or younger, is also a child in need of care in the state of Kansas. They also go to these facilities. You have a map that shows where, color-coded, the empty beds are for foster care. You see Wyandotte and Johnson County have more than enough beds for the care we have for the kids. If we have a need for a facility, what's obvious from what I heard from the homeless people is maybe we need homeless shelters for families. We do not sever parents'
Time
rights
is up, sir. Thank you.
because they're homeless. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm kind of fighting a cold, so you'll have to forgive me a little bit. I've been writing down some notes. I hadn't planned to speak, but I've been listening and writing some things down. But my name is Rosalind Woody. I live at 12743 Walker Avenue here in KCK. And like I said, I didn't plan on speaking, but I just kind of felt compelled to do so as I was sitting here writing down some information. I did a little research. I know people on both sides. And I did a little research, and I really couldn't find enough evidence to support having such a facility. I like to deal in facts. And when you're making your decision, please consider the facts in this case. On hearing the pro side that wants to have this in, I've heard a lot of emotional pleas. I didn't hear a whole lot of facts. And has anybody done a survey, a study of how many of these types of facilities have been opened here in Wyandotte County? How many of them are still operating? Has anybody done that? How many have failed for one reason or another? I do not have any facts myself to write down because, like I said, I did a little research, and I'm kind of going off the top of my head right now, but the information is there. You just have to Google it. It's there. So in closing, one thing I did want to mention. I did hear someone mention that this borders on racial bias. To me, that's kind of an emotionally charged statement. Like I said, I like to deal in facts. Give me the facts of something. If this does border on racial bias, then what's that based on? So in closing, I'd just like to say, please consider the facts when you're making your decision. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Don Crawford, 6309 Roswell, Kansas City, Kansas, 66104. You know, I think everything's been talked about here. The lawyer said something about, in the last meeting also, 3 weeks ago, they kept saying, pass it, let it go, it's needed, and then let the state of Kansas take care of it, make sure it works. Now, we've already lost 70 kids in the state of Kansas, foster kids. That's already over the news, you know. So we know that's not a very good thing. Lawyer wanted to know whether we was against the children or whether it was against the Averys. Sorry. Whether it was against the Averys. It's probably a little bit of, for me, it's a little bit of the Averys, Mr. Avery. When this first started before summer, I wanted to know more about it and what the community felt. So I went out, and one of the board members, or whatever they are upstairs, said, would you mind if I gave Mr. Avery your number? And I said, that's fine. He said, are you going to call him? I said, no, I'm not going to call him. Start trouble. He called me, and I offered him to go walk with me through the neighborhoods to get acquainted with the people that he was going to be working with, or in. I know we don't really count, but since we're outside the 200-foot, is it? Whatever it is. But anyway, I offered him, and he said he would go. So I waited. Then I waited, and I said, this ain't right. So I took off. Got about 2 doors up, and he called, and he said, I'm on my way. I said, well, I ain't waiting, but I'll be within 2 or 3 doors. Never showed. And then when I tried to call him, he never answered. So Mr. Avery's not very trustworthy, in my opinion. That's not a way to run a business, and that's not a way to get into a community. And he hasn't called back since either in 6 or 8 months. Not done anything except what he's doing now. Because he only has to go to, what, 200 foot. Thank you.
Nancy Crawford, 6309 Roswell. I'm nervous, as you can tell. I hadn't planned to speak either, but I had a whole thing prepared to say last meeting, and I did not come. My thing is, there is a need. I think we know that, but the location, again for me, is not proper. If you do some research, I kind of went out and Googled. Has anybody heard of Boys Town? I think that's what we need in this community. It does not fit in where the Averys are wanting to put that facility. It needs to be single-family houses with up to 6 kids per unit. You could raise her and maybe put 2 or 3 houses in that lot. I would support that, but not 45 to 50 kids in one unit. Thank you.
Tony Lasley, 6333 Roswell Avenue, KCK. I wasn't planning to speak either in this event, but what the Averys is doing, I ain't gonna lie. I grew up off of Quindara Boulevard, 2819 Hiawatha. I know several of these people in this room here that I grew up with, but it's just the facility that they're putting us at. You go just a half a block down the way, drug activity, bums walking all up and down the street to the liquor store by that Family Dollar over there. You get two of those kids to get out of line or get out of that facility, just anything could happen over there. That's just my only biggest concern. But you look at the Miralax Center, look at Creative Center, KBC, those places are not in residential areas right off of the main streets. They are in rural areas for a reason. Somebody get out, kid has room to play, have yards to move around in. So I can see both sides of this deal, but it's just the facility to me that's the only thing that's shooting us down. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anyone else speaking in opposition. I would offer those who are here in opposition, whether you spoke or not, if you would like to stand and show your opposition to the commission, I'd ask you to stand at this time. All right, thank you. You may be seated. All right, I will close the public hearing, and I will offer the applicant, if you would like to make any short summative comment, you're welcome to do that, and then I'll turn it over to the commissioners.
Thank you, Mayor, honorable commissioners. In listening to the opposition, it seems as though it can be summarized by it now only being the location of the facility, but ostensibly not just because they don't want it there, but because of safety concerns. And these are concerns that have been brought up repeatedly, both before this governing body at the last meeting and also the 2 times we were in front of the Planning Commission. They were also brought up in the individual meetings we had with the landowners. We address those concerns by pointing out a number of things. First, there is sufficient play area both within the facility courtyard itself, and the Averys also purchased the property right next door. It's a house. It's got additional green space for these children. And moreover, as stated in the business plan provided to the governing body, the Averys are going to have a 1 to 5 or 6 ratio child to staff or staff to child, which is greater than that which is mandated by the Kansas regulations. We've also pointed out time and time again that these kids aren't going to be outside roaming the streets as it seems to be perceived. They're not going to be leaving the facility unless they have adult supervision. So the idea that the Kansas regulations and my clients and their business and their community leaders' commitment to following those regulations aren't good enough to provide the safety that is concerned about is not sensical. It ignores regulations and frankly is just a judgment that somehow my clients aren't going to follow the regulations, which is not true. And the comments about the facility and it's in general not being safe, I mean, I encourage the board to look at the documentation, the written responses we've made to opposition, the explanation for how we're addressing all of those concerns. And I'd also point out, as the board knows, that road is, they're working on putting sidewalks on that road right now. So I just don't see, and to just continue to say, well, there's safety concerns, just ignores what we've been saying time and time again. In closing, I'll say that also, if not this location and not my clients stepping up to want to do this, then where and when and who? There's a shortage of these facilities. There's no question about that. And with that, I want to take a brief second to consult with my client. 1 second. With that, I'll finish. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, the public hearing is now closed, and I'll open it up to the commissioners. The commissioners may either discuss, make a motion, either. Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor. This process started in May. That's when it came to my attention, was when I first saw the item being published for what I think at that time would have been the June Planning and Zoning meeting. And then it had several delays, and as you know, 2 trips here to the commission now and 2 trips back to the Planning and Zoning Board. So here we are, a full 6 months later, dealing with this issue. For myself, I've been observing and participating in the planning and zoning process now for over 20 years. And 9 of those years was as the director of the Leavenworth Road Association. So the passion and the emotion around this issue, I do completely understand. It seems unfortunate to me that so many times, time after time, with planning and zoning issues, it becomes extremely adversarial. And that is too bad, frankly, since I think really what we all want is to make where we live better and do the best we possibly can for the community we live in. Every concern that was expressed tonight is valid, and I don't think any of the concerns that we heard on either side should be brushed aside. This is not, as you can clearly tell from all the testimony, a simple issue, and it doesn't have a simple solution. I have a couple of questions actually for the petitioner, and I would like to ask those questions, but I would also like to just quickly express some clarification around the notion of what is the responsibility of a sitting city or county governing body, and what is the responsibility of the state. And the notion that some of this is just too hard and we don't want to deal with it, so we'll just abdicate that to the state and we'll just let them decide, I don't think is quite correct. The state of Kansas, in my short time here as an elected official, has already removed, frankly, several of the powers that we once had as a governing body. So we do not look to them for just passing something off to them that we don't want to handle. There are parts of this that are ours to handle, and there are parts of this by law that are not, and that's just the way it is. The part that is ours to handle is this special use permit application. The licensing, the regulation of this facility is not ours to handle. That is the state's to handle. Whether we agree with what they've said or done around these children is frankly not part of the discussion tonight, because that is not our part of this. I have to say that it makes it more difficult, knowing that what we're dealing with is a vulnerable population. And knowing that, as has been shared by several of you tonight, some of those state agencies have failed. You know, that is difficult for you and us both. What I would like to know from the petitioner, and I don't know if you want to, I just have a couple of questions. If you receive approval tonight, then when would the facility be able to be open to receive the young people? I don't need an exact day. I need to know, is that 3 months from now? Is that 6 months from now?
We're looking at 3 months, January, February, well, more so February is possible.
So your best guess, your most educated guess is about 90 days.
Yeah, 65, 90 days.
Because, I'm sorry, I want to clarify with our legal staff. If we approve a special use permit tonight for a duration of time, does the clock start tomorrow? Or does it start when the facility opens?
It would start
upon publication? Okay, all right. So if you do not receive approval tonight, then what, have you thought about what your plan would be?
Well, we're kind of in a sticky situation. We own the facility at this point, so we feel we've done everything on our end to ensure that this petition does get approved. So we already own the property. There's no turning back at this point. We're all in.
Okay. I'm looking here for some level of compromise, if one can exist in this situation.
Absolutely.
Mr. Richardson, a question for you. A 1-year permit is allowable, yes?
That's correct. You all can set the initial term
Okay.
up to 2 years.
And also, just to clarify, the conditions that have already been set through the planning and zoning process include no more than 50 children, that we adhere to the child in need of care definition of the children who, through no fault of their own, have been removed from their home. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. There are multiple layers of what a child in need of care or SINC child is, but the recommendation from the Planning Commission was based on those children that were removed to protect them from something else, not that they had done something to deserve to be removed themselves. Not that that necessarily means they're a bad kid, but the definition we used was a child removed from their home for their own protection.
The reason why I would offer a 1-year special use permit is because that's frankly, a very short period of time, and it's a very finite period of time, and it would allow the petitioner the opportunity to open and demonstrate whether you do or don't have the capacity, basically, to handle this. And I do want to just say that I don't doubt the heart of you and your family that want to do this. I don't doubt that. I do believe it's sincere, and I also do, the concerns that have been shared, like I said before, are real, and they need to be taken seriously, so.
Commissioner, I want to jump in on the 1-year piece. I understand, I hear your heart for compromise on this. The one issue I would raise, and I've struggled with this project as well, a 1-year application, basically they would need to be hiring staff for 9 months. And they would have to have people presumably leave other jobs to take these jobs to be hired for 9 months. And that's not the kind of job security that you're going to get high quality staff probably to take a job for only committed for 9 months. If we approved it for 2 years, the thing about special use permits, if this group home fails to perform or begins to violate codes, begins to ramp up calls for service. We've seen this actually with a nightclub, where we have an opportunity to do revocation hearings to take a special use permit away if it doesn't meet it, which is possible. So if we did 1 year, I'm just afraid that we have set it up to make it very difficult. And while I won't be here to enjoy this conversation again, most of you will. And I just think that a 2-year is a short term. It gives them a chance to actually hire staff and gives them an opportunity to actually perform. And if they don't, this time next year, if the place is completely out of control and we got police and ambulances lined up on the outside, this body would have the authority to take that permit back. So I just want to throw that in for my 2 cents worth when we think about a 1-year permit. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mayor Holland. We just want to say that that's exactly what we were about to say in response to the suggestion of a 1-year term. It would set us up for failure, I think. It would prevent us to hire staff. And there's no need for it because, as you said, there's an oversight process. And if we are in violation of our permit, we can get revoked.
Okay.
And there's a 1-year review for the state of Kansas as well.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. I felt the same as you did, Mayor, about the 1-year recommendation. I appreciate that people are trying to come to some mutually acceptable resolution here. But the parameter that I have not heard address is the amount of space that is by law needed to facilitate X number of children in a home like this. We're talking about 50, I think the initial number was, and it's down to 35. The question that I have is, spatially, what is the amount of square footage that the state of Kansas says should be provided? And do we have in the facility enough space to accommodate 35 or less children adequately? And before we get to that, because that's one of my main concerns, I do want to thank everyone on both sides who came from their heart and statistics as they knew them, to voice their concerns, particularly those people like Mr. Coolidge, McKinney, Blade, Jones, who talked very personally about their situation, and also all of the people who want to come forward and help with this project. Dr. Mayberry in training, is he still in the room, and anyone else he's contacted, the Wittens. It's also been my experience with the Leavenworth Road Association that they are very supportive of kids. I believe their concerns, I would have the same thing since the last meeting on this issue with this body. I've driven again around there. I didn't get a chance to go inside, so I understand there are concerns about the physical location and the safety of the kids. However, for me, it would probably weigh into where would those kids be without possibly this location. And it will certainly be up to the Averys or the proprietors to make sure that those kids are safe in an environment like that. I'm encouraged to hear you brought additional property. These kids would be school age. I guess they would have some recreational opportunities with schools or through the schools. But I appreciate the concerns of the Leavenworth Road Association, but where would these kids go otherwise? So I'd like to hear about the square footage issue per child.
Okay, so I don't have the exact square footage, but what I can tell you is it's actually suited for 70 youth. It's 35 bedrooms, 2 youth per bedroom. We actually compromised, and we're down to 50, as well as the other compromises that we've made as well. 50 youth in the property, but it's suited for 70. The medical lodge actually had a capacity of 90 to 99 in that facility.
But if you don't have the numbers, how do you know it's suited for 70 kids per square?
DCF came out and did an initial walkthrough already.
And so who's saying that you can accommodate up to 70?
DCF came out, they came out and did the initial walkthrough with us in the beginning.
Okay. And I'm not sure that I believe
And
we're comparing apples to apples when we're talking about the kids that you're going to have there and senior citizens or people who are in beds and wheelchairs. So I'm not particularly persuaded by that argument. You're talking about different populations and use of space.
Absolutely, and maybe I misunderstood the question. Are you asking the square footage of the entire facility? Like how many square feet the facility is? Or?
In essence, I'm asking, do you have enough square footage based on what the state of Kansas says to accommodate how many kids you're asking for? Initially was 50, 35. I don't believe I've heard anything that says what is allowable by state regulation. What is the spatial requirement?
Commissioner Townsend, I reviewed all of the statutes and regulations a couple of times, although I am not an expert at them as some of the folks that spoke tonight. But what I can tell you is that I don't believe that the regulations and statutes dictate a specific square footage per child ratio. It doesn't work like that. And it really wouldn't make much sense to me for it to work like that because every facility is a lot different. But again, this is something that's very particularly regulated by the state of Kansas, and it's a decision that they make when they do the review of the facility for the licensing requirements. Under KSA 65504, subsection A, says a license granted to maintain a center or child care facility shall state the name of the licensee, describe the particular premises in or at which the business shall be carried on, whether it shall receive and care for women or children, and the number of women or children that may be treated, maintained, boarded, or cared for at any one time. No greater number of women or children than is authorized in the license shall be kept on those premises, and the business shall not be carried on in any building or place not designated in the license. Commissioner, I'm glad you brought up that question because that was something that I thought was very important reviewing these statutes, is that we will have people that are used to regulating these types of things coming to the facility, doing review and making those kinds of decisions. So even if the board ultimately grants this application with a 50-child restriction, does not mean that the state of Kansas won't limit it even further if they choose to do so. But that is something that, regardless of what that is, will be put into the license and will have to be abided by.
I think we're still talking around the question that I asked. I guess there's no spatial requirement by the state of Kansas.
Okay, yes, I just Googled it. There is a spatial requirement, and it's 70 square feet per child. And DCF came and verified at the time when they came and did our walkthrough that we have 35 bedrooms that are suitable for 70 children. So we did our initial walkthrough already. DCF had their initial walkthrough already. So I'm sorry I didn't have that number off the top of my head, but we are compliant with that number, to answer your question.
And the present request is for what, 35?
50.
50?
We can fit 70. We're going for 50.
I hope you do go, if this goes through, go with the lower number just to see, given the concerns, especially of Leavenworth Road, and I see where they're going with that. Can people who are related to these children come visit them at your facility?
Yes.
And what I'm going through there again is this corner, limited parking, and all of that. So, all right. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Murguia.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Avery, I just wanted to say to you that I really do appreciate your passion for children and your entrepreneurial spirit in purchasing a building and following your dream and your vision there. However, as I told you last time, what I was concerned about is your capacity. And the biggest, single most red flag for me and looking at your capacity to handle a facility like this is that you purchased a building before you had the permission to use it in the way in which you wanted to use it. That's concerning. But your eagerness, it should be, you know, like I said, your entrepreneurial spirit is admired, and I really appreciate that. I am, like Commissioner Townsend and Commissioner Bynum, concerned about the number of children in the facility. Before I say anything else, Commissioner Bynum, did you make a motion?
I did not.
You did not? Okay. Well, I would tell you what, based on the information that I've gathered here and based on the unanimous approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission, I would make a motion that if it's possible to restrict the use to 35 kids and the special use permit to be approved for 18 months. I hope if that is seconded, you would take this 18-month opportunity to prove yourself to this entire commission. That's a motion.
All right, I've heard a second to the motion. There's a motion to second 35 kids and 18 months. The question would be for the applicant if it works, or if it is based on your modeling, if your business plan even works with 35 kids in 18 months.
This just puts me in a very awkward position. I'm sorry, I didn't come prepared to, we already lowered it from 70 initially down to 50. We're trying our best to compromise with the community. We have all these stipulations on it already. We're trying our best to work with the community as much as we can. We keep bringing the numbers down. Is there any way you guys can compromise with us whatsoever? And I mean, down from 2 years to 18 months, 70 to 35, is there any way that we can continue to work? Could we?
I mean, and I'll just chime in here speaking in terms of the motion. I very much appreciate the opportunity to compromise. I mean, I think that's something we value and something we've tried in a number of places. My concern, and I've struggled with this because as a former foster parent myself, I've worked in residential group homes for 4 years. I know the need. I know the need in our community, and I know the need generally. I'm concerned about huge group homes. I think I'm concerned about the number. I also know we have a huge number of kids that need it. So I don't think it's an optimum situation, but I don't have a better idea. My concern is the facility is very large. It's going to take capacity to be successful. There is an economy of scale in this size of facility. I think they have compromised once with 50, down from 70, which is a significant reduction. I think anything under a 2-year plan to give them, which we give to everybody else, anything under 2 years just doesn't give them a chance to hire staff and do a good job. So I would speak against the motion, though it is a motion and a second properly before the commission. I think we should, if we're going to vote it, if we're going to give them a chance, we need to vote it approval. If we're not going to give them a chance, we need to vote it down and let them move on with their lives. But I think they have already compromised significantly, and I would just think, I don't think the neighbors, anything the neighbors have said changes from going from 50 to 35. I think everything the neighbors said is still in effect, whether it's 35 or 50. I think everything the neighbors said is still in effect with 18 or 24 months. I think we just give them a chance or don't give them a chance, but putting them in limbo and making their financial model a struggle with 35 kids, I just think is a setup to fail. So I just want to speak against it, though I want to appreciate very much both of our commissioners who are working to compromise on this. Commissioner Philbrook.
So first I want to say that this has been very grueling for everybody I know that's been involved with it. I'm speaking for everybody on both sides. It has been absolutely heartbreaking for, I'm sure, most everybody on both sides. And I don't believe that anybody's going to be happy on both sides because of this, because it is very emotional and it is our lives, and we all do care about children, and we don't want children to be mistreated or not cared for properly. I have to agree with Commissioner Bynum on when she says that we do have limitations on what we are allowed to do as commissioners. First, I would like, though, to ask Rob if you have anything that you'd like to add, since you were present at both of the hearings earlier, and have anything that you would like to put into this that you think could be helpful.
I think that it's been fairly well covered this evening. I think that the stipulation or the comment indicating that, you know, they do have to come back. It can't look like a hangout. They have to do a good job because there is a limited term to the special use permit. You know, and in most cases that we deal with, those stipulations and those, you know, I guess you might call them a warning about what it's going to be like when they come back, are very effective in, you know, at least 9 out of 10 cases that we do. So.
Okay, so you're satisfied with what although you don't get a chance to really be satisfied or not, I shouldn't even have asked you that. That was unfair. Sorry, Rob, put you right on the spot. But otherwise, what has been put forth to us from the planning and zoning, you recommend approval on?
Yeah, they adopted the recommendation that the staff made at the planning commission meeting.
I would ask if the second would be able to rescind his second.
I have a comment and then we'll carry on with that.
All right. Commissioner Bynum.
Well, I could be in agreement with 35 kids in 18 months, but, and my question is, I thought that I read in some of this previous material that were you to be approved, you would initially start with a smaller group.
Yes.
Such as a group of 35.
No, the capacity was 50. We're going to scale up to that number. So as we hire, we're going to scale up to that number.
I guess that's what I'm saying. You
Absolutely.
would scale up to 50.
Yes, so
35 might be a number you would start with.
But that, yeah.
For 18 months.
Excuse me?
I'm just trying to make sure I understand, because earlier, not tonight, but in a previous presentation, I read in the packet that you would scale up. So
Yeah.
that, I took that to mean that if you got approval, when you opened your doors, you would not have 50 kids, you might have 20, you might have 25,
Absolutely.
you might have 30.
And yes, we have a reserve.
I guess what I'm saying
sorry.
is, the reason why I could support 35 for 18 months is because, again, that's another attempt at a compromise, but 35 kids at the 18-month period, you would have demonstrated that you have the capacity, that you've shown us that the facility can be a place that would work for the children, that there is green space, that there is a place for the children to play, that it can be safe, and then we can all come back here and, with no fanfare whatsoever, provide you a special use permit that ultimately gets you what you wanted in the first place. So I just wanted to clarify in the beginning what in a previous session we did hear, that if you were approved, you would start at a smaller number. That's all I'm trying to get at.
Absolutely, and we planned on being at our capacity within a year's space based on the models that we created.
Commissioner Walker.
I don't understand. I'm sorry. I don't understand why we're compromising. What we're compromising. Who we're compromising for, or who it benefits. The people that spoke in opposition don't want it, and the people that are in favor of it do. So why are we trying to make a compromise? Our planning commission, which every one of us appoints people to, unanimously twice approved this for 2 years. Our planning department approved it based on factual information. You know, I can say that this is probably not an ideal location, and I have expressed concerns in my mind from my association with a woman for 40 years that worked in child psychiatric, that your blending of 5 to 17-year-olds are going to cause you problems down the road. But that's not my problem. I'm not the professional here that can make that evaluation. The state of Kansas seems to be fine with it. I say give them their 2 years. The track record's going to be brought back to this group minus 2 of us, and you will be able to present evidence, or there will be a lack of evidence. I don't know what we're compromising for, just to make somebody a little happier that, well, they only got 18 months instead of 2 years?
Motion?
All right.
If there's not a motion on the floor, I'll make a motion.
There is a motion and a second for,
Well, I'm not
you
going to
spoke.
vote for the motion that's on the floor. That's the whole point of what I'm making in my statement.
Thank you. That was a speech against. Commissioner McKiernan.
So Commissioner Johnson's going to come in behind me. So one of the points that I wanted to make was that you said that if we only approved 12 months, we were setting you up to fail. And I would say that that in some ways presupposes that the special use permit won't be renewed at the end of those 12 months. I would suggest that when you hire people, you are hiring them for the long term, because the operation of your facility is going to be such that it will be approved and reapproved and reapproved and reapproved. So my point would be that whether it's 12 months or 18 months or 24, you're going to come back here with evidence, and you're going to demonstrate success, you're going to demonstrate compliance, you're going to demonstrate that you can do the job, and I think you'll come back with such a strong case that your special use permit will be renewed at that time, whether it's 12 or 18 or 24 months from now. And I would suggest that that's the attitude that you want to take into this, because you can take the converse. If we give you 24 months and something goes south in 3 months, I guarantee you we'll see you back here in 3 months, and we'll be at the point of having to revoke because of noncompliance with the conditions of the special use permit. So my suggestion would be, whether it's 12 or 18 or 24, you come back with the attitude that you are going to demonstrate success, and we're going to go, heck yes, that is a successful place.
Commissioner.
Go ahead. Well, I would further say that if you said that you would get to 50, your original plan was to get to 50 children in 1 year. Is that correct?
Yes, based on the markets, yes.
And that's how you kind of have projected that you're going to be able to be sustainable, is to get to the 50 in 1 year.
Yes.
Okay. Then at that point, if Commissioner Murguia is acceptable, then what I would propose is an alteration to her original, or to replace her original motion with 50 children with a special use permit time of 1 year, at which time you make your case again.
So I'd be happy to replace my motion with 50 kids for a year. Don't look panicked, Mr. Avery. All it is about is it's giving you an opportunity, and it's making you accountable to the community that you're building your facility in. That's the only thing it is.
Okay, do you mind if I talk to my mom just really, really quickly? Please?
I'm okay if the mayor
All right,
responds.
so let's just be clear procedurally. You've made a motion for 50 for 1 year. And that's the motion and the second on the table, and we're in the discussion mode of whether or not we'd approve it, whether or not we agree with that. Commissioner Johnson.
I feel like Hal turning my mic on. But I agree with Hal. It's been to the Planning and Zoning Commission 2 times, and it's been approved unanimously 2 times with staff recommendation. I don't know why we're going back and forth. They've approved this and sent it back to us. I had a chance to kind of watch the proceedings and learn some things, but Staff has reviewed this. They've made their recommendation. Planning and zoning has vetted it. They've approved it twice, and they sent it back to us. I just as soon go with the recommendation of what's been presented to us.
I'll take that as a speech against the motion. Commissioner Bynum.
Just need clarification. One of the stipulations is the child in need of care, that we limit it to the child in need of care. My question is, how will we know, as this body, if that is a point of revocation, then how will we know that that's been complied with?
The state will review the terms of their special use permit because they have to show their local zoning authority, and that stipulation with the 7 criteria that are in the blue sheet tonight that indicate that this is for kids that are taken out for their own protection. Those are the only types that are allowed, and that should be the only types that the state would send to them because it would violate the zoning.
Commissioner Walker.
My final word on this is I've sat here as a commissioner. I've been here as the attorney. I have seen us approve bars, restaurants, used car lots. I mean, I could give you a whole litany of other, quote, businesses in which we have given special use permits for 2 to 5 years in order that the business has an adequate time to establish a track record. I hate to put it in those terms, but this is a business as well as it is for the children. They've got to be able, I mean, I guarantee you I wouldn't invest in this business if I only knew he had 1 year. And I wouldn't invest in a bar if I only knew I had 1 year. And I got to go with the idea that being, we're always up here, going on about entrepreneurials. We love entrepreneurials that come in here and try to make a business in Wyandotte County and have it succeed. And somehow I don't get this whole 1 year, 18 months, 2 year deal. It's not our job to make that decision. I've heard the people speak about the state of Kansas, and they've had some major problems. But I'm going to blame that on the legislature and the governor for not funding it adequately to do the job. Now, I know we have a representative out here who I'm not wishing to insult, and I don't blame him or his faction up there, but why are we wanting to... Somebody explain to me why we only want to give them 1 year. Is it because we're really, really worried that they're not going to do the job, and when we can when this special use permit can be revoked at any time if there is abuse, sexual problems, staff, whatever it might be? I don't get who we're trying to accommodate here. We're not accommodating anybody. I'm sticking with 2 years and as is, and they'll come back and they'll have to produce and I'm sure they'll bring in a group of witnesses. But my final point is, every time we make one of these businesses, and I know we had a bar that we made come back every 6 months or a year because there were fights and shootings.
Shootings, yeah.
But every time you make somebody come back for a special use permit, especially one that is controversial, you're costing them a great deal of money and time. For our convenience, it's no big deal. We got a staff of lawyers on full time. They've got to hire a lawyer, put this together. Sometimes that can be minor, sometimes it can be very expensive. So when you're telling people to come back every year to get a review just for some public reason, you're not really doing the job. I'm sticking with what I said. That's how I feel about it. they can't produce in 2 years, then off with their heads.
I am confident, for the record, the commissioner means that figuratively. I would take that as a speech against the motion. If it comes to me, I would vote against the motion as well, for the same reasons for many of the same reasons Commissioner Walker gave. Except for the off with the head part, I do not support that. Commissioner Philbrook.
I'm as bad as the rest of them. There we go. Get it on. So where I am in this as of now is that I haven't heard any additional evidence that would affect my consideration of the factors set forth so far. And therefore, I don't see any reason to overturn the Planning Commission's recommendations regarding those factors. Period. 2 years as put before us is where I am.
I will take, there's already a motion that's a speech against. I will take your second as another speech against the motion. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. I'm speaking only because I raised the issue about the square footage, but you satisfied that. That was not something addressed before. In a previous life, I did work for the Small Business Administration, wondering why certain businesses failed and certain succeeded. And it is important to give people enough time and enough resources to try to succeed. I do believe 2 years would be the appropriate time, and up to 50. Hope you get there gradually as originally put forth. So.
All right, we have a motion and a second before us. I've heard 6 speeches against and 3 for. We are ready for a vote. I would call for a roll call.
Which one are we doing?
We are voting on 50 children for 1 year. That is the motion before us. 50 children for 1 year. And if that motion fails, then there would be another motion for something else.
Okay.
Roll call.
Roll call. Walters? No. Philbrook?
No.
Bynum?
Aye.
Walker?
No.
Townsend?
No.
McKiernan?
Aye.
Mugia?
Aye.
Johnson?
No.
Kane? Markley?
No.
I'd make a motion that we accept the Planning Commission's recommendations of 2 years and 50 children.
Second.
All right. That motion is properly before us. Seeing no discussion, roll call.
Roll call. Walters? Philbrook?
Aye.
Bynum?
Aye.
Walker?
Aye.
Townsend? McKiernan?
Aye.
Mugia?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Kane? Markley?
Aye.
The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
All right. Thank you all for coming tonight. We are going to take a 5-minute recess. We would encourage you to take your time. We have additional business to do. I would like to advise the commission we have completed the first item. All right, we are reconvened now. If you are not staying for the remainder of the meeting, please exit quietly. As I mentioned at the break, we have now completed one item. I want to congratulate the commissioners. 2 if you count the consent vote, so that's right. So the next item is item B3, special use permit 2017-58 for Eric Bishop. I'd invite Mr. Bishop to come forward and make presentation, and then we'll open the public hearing. Actually, before you make presentation, I'm going to ask our staff to say why it was pulled off the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following the Planning Commission meeting and the recommendation and vote, we found out that some of the information that we thought we heard at the Planning Commission meeting and the basis of my recommendation, the vote of the Planning Commission was incorrect as to the animals that were actually on the site. And so I've asked that it be removed for further consideration or to be referred back to the Planning Commission for them to establish what the facts are.
Okay, so you believe that the 12 goats is inaccurate?
At some point between then and now, yes, that was at the time of the Planning Commission that the animal numbers were inaccurate.
Thank you. Okay, sir, I will allow you to make presentation at this time.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Eric Bishop, and I live at 1437 South 79th Street, Kansas City, Kansas, and I own the property at 3552 North 47th Street. I rent it out. I'm a landlord. I have 7 properties here in the Kansas City, Kansas area, and just as a little background, about 2 years ago when that tenant came to me and I was renting it out, they came with the understanding that they would be able to raise animals because it is about 2-acre lot. And we made the wrongful assumption that that was allowed because there are other neighbors that have animals, and the property goes deep enough, the animals are far enough back from the street that we did not think that was a problem. So I allowed the tenant to have those animals out of ignorance for the city code, and I'll admit that now. And so those animals kind of grew and grew, and we got more and more. And then when the city found out that we had the animals and fined us, that's when this process started. So we had more animals, and then once the permit was filed for, we had more animals than what the permit was asking for. Some of that due to, like we had a llama and 2 donkeys that actually belonged to someone else, friends that needed somebody to take care of the animals, so we had them there. And that's why we didn't mention them at the planning board commission meeting, because they were only temporary. Since that time, those donkeys have been removed and gone back to their owners, and the llama also. We also have some ducks and chickens that we're getting rid of this weekend. There's the excess goats, because at one time they had up to 20. They're already in the process of being removed also. So we pledge we will get down to that number of 12 goats and 12 goats only if this is approved.
Okay. All right. So what I'll do is I will open it up. We need to open it up for public comment. Is there anyone here tonight who would like to, and you can have a seat there in the front row. Is there anyone here tonight who would like to speak in favor of the application? Let the record show no one is moving forward to speak in favor. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the application? Again, let the record show no one is speaking in opposition. We will close the public hearing. Since there were no comments to make a summative response to, we won't have that. We have heard from the staff. It's open to the commission. Commissioner Philbrook.
Did I read? Yeah, I know, guys, you're gonna make fun of me. It's about the goats, right? No. What it's about is land use and how we treat our property. And did I read it properly that particular piece of property is not appropriate for 12 goats to be on?
The Conservation District indicated that, and I believe that was subject to some potential things they could do with the property to make it fit for the goats.
That they could do?
Yes.
Okay. And so where are you on this now, since he stated there's other things going? Are you still want to review this? some more?
If it was just the 12 goats and they were down to the 12 goats, I would keep the same recommendation we had.
Well, okay, so I guess what I'm gonna say is you have questions, so I'm gonna recommend that we pay attention to Rob Richardson and let it go back to them to explore it.
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
A motion to send it back to planning?
Second.
Second. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. I'd like to know exactly what the planning, what staff's recommendation is. I'm understanding that with the revelation of the goats, the chickens, the llamas, and the roosters.
The donkeys.
Those. I forgot the donkeys, okay. That staff is not in favor of this application. Is that correct?
After the planning commission recommendation, we concurred with that. So the approval would be 2 years, daily disposal of goat waste, the goat's diet be fed to them and not grazing so that the grass isn't overgrazed. That goes to the conservation district's comments that if the land were to be overgrazed, then it would be a potential pollution source, and then that they obtain the animal control permits for 12 goats.
Well, I think this probably should go back so we can clarify exactly what animals are there or not. This property's in District 1. I've had a lot of complaints from residents in that area, the Sarda Drive and 49th Street, 39th Street, that have resulted in our code enforcement having to deal with a lot of animals and fowl that should not be there. The fowl have run afoul of the codes. So I'm not sure why there's a need for 12 goats. I am concerned about the comments made by the Conservation District. So if it hasn't been seconded, I would second that go back for further consideration. But I am really watching these menageries that are springing up in this area. Thank you.
There is a motion and a second and a speech in favor of sending it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I would just note before the vote, for all the goat owners and other animal owners, full disclosure at the Planning and Zoning meeting is critical to approval and to retaining your special use permit, because it could have gone through and then we find out that there's donkeys and llamas, and it could have been revoked altogether, and the goats would have had to go away too. So there's a risk to your special use permit for not doing full disclosure. So with that, I don't see any further comment. Roll call.
Roll call: Walters. Aye. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
King. Markley.
Aye.
The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
All right, it has been sent back to what date?
December 11th.
December 11th, Planning and Zoning.
Yes. We have time to verify that in short order.
Thank you. All right, thank you, sir. All right, that brings us, we have now finished our planning and zoning portion. It now brings us to our non-planning consent agenda. I will ask if anyone in attendance tonight, any staff member or any commissioner would like to remove an item from the non-planning consent agenda. Any item not so removed will be voted on by a single vote.
Move to approve all items.
Second?
There is a motion and a second. Let the record show no one is moving to the microphone to remove an item. It is properly before us. Roll call.
Roll call: Walters. Aye. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
King. Markley.
Aye.
The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
That brings us to the administrator's agenda. Item number 1, sale of general obligation refunding bonds. Mr. Bach?
Thank you, Mayor. Commission, our Chief Financial Officer, Kathleen Von Aschen, is working with analysis to determine we could do a refunding and save our city a considerable amount of money. I would ask Kathleen to come forward and offer a brief presentation about
what she is proposing. And the reason this is going directly to full commission is also noted because there's a potential change in federal legislation that we want to take advantage of this year. Kathleen?
That's right. The congressional tax bill, if it were to be approved, would potentially eliminate the opportunity to do advanced refundings, which in other words, it's a refinancing of the existing debt prior to the call date. So as a result, we identified amongst our many bond issues which ones would be potentially eligible to do an advanced refunding. And we found that the 2010A would be, which is the first one on the list in the resolution, would be eligible. We would save approximately, on a net present value basis, $4.4 million over the next 10 years.
Great.
Or 12 years. So the refunding, because it's a crossover advanced refunding, the savings wouldn't be incurred until 2020. So, and then it would be for 10 years. And the annual savings is about $500,000 to our city bond and interest fund beginning in 2020.
Great.
The list of other 4 items are 3 other bond issues taken out in 2010 under the stimulus bill during the recession. And they have a unique financing in that they're issued on a taxable basis, and then we get a kind of a federal subsidy credit check from the feds to give us the difference between the interest rate that you would have paid had we issued them as GO bonds and tax exempt. And so, so we've been getting those checks. Unfortunately, if the congressional tax bill does pass, there is a risk that those subsidy checks would stop coming because the presidential OMB office would decide that there needed to be extraordinary sequestration taking place in order to reduce the federal deficit. So there's some risk that we would stop getting those checks. So as a result, we have listed these as also potentially we're going to refund those, but we're still kind of weighing our options. So it's the savings would only be for the next 3 years, roughly, or the next 2 years. It's about $1.4 million. But that would be only if the OMB stopped paying us altogether. And in 2010 or 2020, then we could go ahead and refund it using a current refunding, which is allowed by the current tax bill. So we're still weighing our options, but we're definitely going to be doing the advanced refunding on the 2010A. So.
Great.
Yes.
All right.
Move to approve the resolution as submitted.
Second.
All right. It is moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, roll call.
Roll call: Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
All right. That brings us to our.
I would just note that the pricing for those bonds will come forward to this governing body on the 14th, and that'll allow us to complete that.
December 14th, 2 weeks. Thank you.
Oh, maybe I missed it.
I apologize, Doug. There was a recent development, and unfortunately, we're not able to get our schedules coordinated with S&P, and so they're not going to be able to give us a rating until the 15th. So on the 14th, we're actually going to be providing you a resolution with some parameters for the pricing, and ask that you or that you grant authority to the county administrator or the mayor to go ahead and sign the documents accordingly. So because the pricing is going to take place around the 19th instead. And we do need to have that done, 2 weeks prior to the end of the fiscal year, because we need to allow for a closing period. So it all has to happen before December 31st.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right. That brings us to our final item. It is a resolution to exercise options to purchase property for the Healthy Campus District. We had a comprehensive presentation and discussion at the 5 o'clock Knowing that the 7 o'clock was going to be a long meeting, we just guessed that it would be, and we guessed right. So we did the presentation on the Healthy Campus at the 5 o'clock, but this is going to be a very brief presentation, and then we will open it for public comment and then a vote.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. John Stevens, Economic Development. As the mayor stated, at 5 o'clock, special session that was open to the public and available, we gave a very comprehensive update as to this action as well as the overall Healthy Campus project as proposed. So the action tonight is to authorize up to $2 million be expended at the discretion of the county administrator in order to move engineering and architecture forward for the project, as well as to exercise options on the purchase of the block of property. So this would not actually be purchasing, it would be exercising the options to, quote, control the land for the project. The very brief overview, as I've outlined it here, we're going to briefly touch on the need and the outcomes, the project outline, the schedule, and why this is before you tonight, and then the financials, and then next steps in action. So without going through all of this, I'll just state that as was discussed extensively tonight, the Wyandotte Community Health Assessment, the CHA, continually outlines that there are a lot of health and wellness needs in the community, particularly in underserved areas around the downtown area. And many of those we believe that are due to the lack of health facilities, lack of a lot of wellness facilities, access to those services, as well as full service grocery. So the project, the Healthy Campus as outlined, is to provide a high quality full service grocer that would be committed to more than selling food. This is the proposed grocer, as is outlined, would buy local, offer healthy food programs, cooking programs, and has had discussions and would partner with the YMCA for cooperative programming for the benefit of the community. Additionally, the YMCA would be the community center partner, and they're a longstanding 150-plus-year-old Kansas City organization with a focus on healthy living and social responsibility. And finally, by combining those, this project believes that combining those along with a healthcare service provider would be the best possible way to provide quantifiable improvements in health outcomes. So the project itself is a $37.1 million project as outlined. The approximate design plan is 35,000 square foot full service YMCA with aquatics as well as a health service provider, 32,000 square feet of retail, of which 12,000 square feet would be a full service grocery, and then a 63,000 square foot parking and outdoor plaza area that would join the two and provide access and parking and availability, as well as some outdoor programming space. The location, as you can see, is between 10th and 11th on the north side of Minnesota Avenue and the south side of State. That is the block. It's on a steep grade, so as we move through, you can see the programming. There will be green space as well as the retail on the eastern portion and the YMCA on the western portion, with the parking and plaza splitting between. Here's a little bit closer of the current site plan as projected. You can see the CSO space, the green space, which would be also water retention and other needs that would also service the area, as well as the two-story fitness facility, the YMCA, and then the retail grocery on the far right side of the presentation. There have already been done, and I might add, we have CBC with us. They're a partner that's been working with us on that, Bill Crandall and Peter Ho. And with the architecture team, this is some initial massing study and layout and design scheme as they've worked through this that shows the view looking northeast over Minnesota Avenue to the YMCA as well as the grocery and retailer. Here's another view showing the grade change of the site from Minnesota Avenue to State Avenue. It drops considerably. So that would allow for a single story for the YMCA on Minnesota with a two-story structure, two-story visibility on the State Avenue side. It would also allow with the parking for access under the garage into that. So the partners, as I mentioned, are the YMCA, Healthy Communities Wyandotte, And I believe all the commissioners and the mayor have been distributed a letter that was mentioned by the president and CEO of Healthy Communities Wyandotte, Kathy Harding, in the 5 o'clock session in support of their $1 million grant that they've already allocated. So the financials. The total project's 37.1. This breaks this out. The community center, the sources of funding is 17.5 million. Of which $6 million would come from the previously discussed GEO bond proceeds for community center commitment, a 1.39 million GEO bond for the community center, and then I think it's important to point out that the YMCA has designated that they would contribute 6.8 million plus the 1 million Health Foundation. Plus, we will be seeking, and the urgency for some of this is the application process on federal new market tax credits. That's the 2.3 million. And then for grocery retail would be 7 million, and that would be your total. Then I also will just quickly mention that there would be a TIF and a CID on that. So the next steps are tonight, the resolution authorizing the county administrator to expend not to exceed $2 million to keep the project moving, continue with architecture and engineering, as well as enter into contracts on the land site so it's under control so that we can have, this project would be shovel ready, quote unquote, for the new market tax credit allocation, which as I outlined provides a large chunk of the financing. With that, any questions?
All right, what I'm going to do is, because this has come directly to the commission, I'm going to open it up if anyone would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this proposal. You would have 3 minutes, and as I told the previous group, you're not obligated to use all 3 minutes. But there are 3 minutes available to you. So if you'd like to come forward, I'd ask anyone who'd like to speak in support to come speak first. Please state your name. Your address is not necessary.
Good evening, Anthony Arnold. I am in support of this project. I was asked by a couple of people from the media why I was in support of this project, particularly when it involves so much money from the city coffers. Well, let me tell you, private development will not happen in the central cities of Wyandotte County until we step up as a body and demonstrate some success stories. And I believe this would represent the first of many success stories that could happen in our central city communities. And I would urge this body to support this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Wells, 6221 Armstrong. As this commission knows, I come to sports parks every time. There's some things that we could help this group with in documenting some of the things that they might want to adjust their plan for. We've got quite a bit of information available that's widely unknown. But my answer to this project is go.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm in support of this project. My name is Frank Lavender. I'm with the Historic Northeast Business Association. We've been trying for a number of years to do something about our food desert. It seems like an opportunity to make it happen, and I'm in full support of it.
Thank you.
You can hear me coming a mile away. These shoes. My feet kept falling asleep sitting back there. Good evening. I'm Beth Lowe Smith, and I'm here tonight on behalf of KC Healthy Kids to speak in favor of the resolution for additional funding for the Healthy Campus. KC Healthy Kids rallies communities to improve access to healthy food and spaces for safe physical activity. And we do that because when our neighborhoods provide opportunities for and support for physical activity and healthy eating and other healthy habits, people are less likely to experience obesity and obesity-related diseases. The Healthy Campus matters because most of the neighborhoods north of State Avenue and east of 635 are low access to healthy grocery retail according to the USDA. Furthermore, hundreds of families in the neighborhoods adjacent to the proposed Healthy Campus hundreds of families in the neighborhoods adjacent to the Healthy Campus don't own a car or other vehicle, and they don't live within half-mile estimated comfortable walking distance of a full-service grocery store. And that's a problem. Putting affordable, high-quality, healthy grocery stores in the neighborhoods where these folks live and accessible to them is really crucial to improving health outcomes. But unfortunately, securing a grocery operator for projects such as this is often pretty difficult, and so it's really important to act quickly when the opportunity for that sort of partnership arises. We encourage you to invest in the Healthy Campus now while such an opportunity exists, and we hope that you will approve this resolution.
Thank you.
G'day, Will Anderson, representing the downtown shareholders of Kansas City, Kansas. The current chair at the board meeting on Tuesday. We were fully in support of this. We see it as a good catalyst to continue the effort in downtown Kansas City, Kansas. Hope you support it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Wes McCain. I live a couple blocks away from here. I also work at the health department with the Healthy Communities Wyandotte initiative. I've only lived here for about 9 years now. It's not that long, but it's long enough to remember the Apple Market at 7th and Minnesota. That place was a disgrace. I shopped there a couple of times, only when I had to, and then it closed. And I think the people in the downtown area and the people in this side of the county deserve something better, a place that's better than that. It's hard. Cities know that it's hard, and they've known it's hard for a long time to build grocery stores and gyms and places for people to be active in low-income neighborhoods. They've known for a long time that that people need those things because they're convenient. What I think we've learned in the last couple of decades, especially the last decade, is that it's more than convenience. It's about health. And if people don't have full-service, affordable grocery stores with healthy options and places to be active that are also affordable, it affects their health. And we've learned that more and more, and that more evidence comes out all the time that's important. And at least for me, that's the biggest reason why I think that's important for this area. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Catherine Kelly. I'm the Executive Director of Cultivate Kansas City, and I am speaking in support of the proposed investment in the Healthy Campus. I served on the advisory committee that helped do the initial planning for it, and my commitment to the project has not wavered over the long time period we've been involved in. I want to speak specifically to the grocer that is committed to be involved in this process. They are known for their support of local farms and local businesses. And as somebody who represents farmers, we have a farming community that will benefit from their presence. The store will take local food dollars, reinvest them back into the community. They will work with local farmers, they'll work with local food processing businesses, and we'll see some really excellent economic development activities as a result. So I support you in supporting this investment. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Bach. My name is Lynn Kaluva. I'm an owner of Rattle City at 833 Minnesota Avenue. However, I'm here this evening as the chairman of the advisory board for our downtown improvement district. Our board voted to adopt a resolution in support of the Healthy Campus and in support of the action you're considering this evening. It's brief. I'd like to read the resolution to you. It summarizes our position. A resolution in support of Unified Government of Wyandotte County and Kansas City, Kansas action to allocate funds for land acquisition and initial development planning for the Healthy Campus project. Whereas the mission of the Downtown Improvement District, technically the self-supported municipal improvement district, is to promote and develop downtown Kansas City, Kansas into a vibrant district for people to work, shop, and dine, including the development, promotion, and support of community events and activities open to the general public. And whereas the planned healthy campus is within and adjacent to the Downtown Improvement District, and whereas the planned healthy campus project is to include features and amenities that will enhance the quality of life for all Wyandotte County residents, and whereas we believe that the Healthy Campus project will attract residents and businesses to the downtown business and residential districts, and whereas we believe that the Healthy Campus project will lead to increased investment and increased property values in the downtown area, and whereas we believe that this increased investment and rising property values will improve the futures of not only downtown businesses and residents, but that those benefits will also extend to the entire county. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that the Advisory Board of the Downtown Improvement District, SMID, strongly supports the Healthy Campus project and urges the Commission to approve the resolution authorizing the county administrator to exercise options to purchase property, and so forth and so forth. We support the Healthy Campus, and we are urging you to approve your resolution. Thank you. I have left copies with the clerk for all the commissioners and the mayor. Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. Broderick Crawford, Executive Director of the NBC Community Development Corporation. I live at 824 State Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas 66101. I am here to support the Healthy Campus on behalf of the NBC Community Development Corporation and also New Bethel Church. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Emily Brown. I'm a resident of Kansas City, Kansas. I live at 4307 Wood Avenue, 66102. I'm also the Chief Executive Officer of Food Equality Initiative. We're a local Kansas City-based nonprofit that helps low-income families diagnosed with food allergies and celiac disease access safe food. And we are in support of the Healthy Campus because we believe that all members of our community deserve resources to help maintain their health.
Good evening. My name is William Boyce. I'm a business owner of 64 years in our community, also a member of the Douglas Sumner Neighborhood Group. I'm in favor of the Healthy Campus and the grocery store, something that has been much needed for many, many years, and I hope that we approve this proposal. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vonzel Sawyer, and I'm one of the board members from the Wyandotte Health Foundation. And I'd like to speak in support of the Healthy Campus, not for all the other reasons that everyone else stated, but there's something else that it does for our community, and that is there's also a need for an emotional, spiritual, social uplift of our community as well. When you see something going on and something happening, everybody wants to see what's going on. And I think that's one of the things that is needed for the area, for people to be able to rally behind and to see that something is happening where I live, because that does good for everybody involved. So I just want to say I support it not only for the reasons of food, for health, but also for the well-being of the culture and of the people of Wyandotte County. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see anyone else moving forward to speak in support. I would offer anyone who is here in support, whether you have spoken or not, if you would like to stand at this time to show your support to the commission. Thank you very much. And now I'll offer the opportunity for anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this proposal to please come forward.
Hello, my name is Karin Wyatt. I live at 359 Troop Avenue, KCK 66101. I know we need a grocery store, but is this for a healthy community, or for the YMCA? Seems like it's more for a YMCA. And what's more important to our community? Everybody else has a grocery store already. I think if we was gonna break ground for the grocery store first, I think that would be great. Then I'd probably be in support. But if you're gonna put it second, then that's not what the community is looking for. And we're in a food desert, sure enough. And a lot of times you're trying to go get some eggs and bread, dollar store, it's out of bread. And so you have to go to service station on 8th Street, get some bread, which is probably 2 or 3 days old. So what I'm saying, we want our community to go forward, but we want to go forward like we need, because your needs already filled. Our needs aren't filled because we don't have it. We have a YMCA, sure, I have a membership there. But like I said, what's more important for the healthy community is a store, grocery store first. We have so many grade schools in the area. We have people over on Quindaro, 27th Street. You got 1st Street. I mean, you have plenty of people will support the grocery store. I go up north. I go where I can go to get it. I go up north. I go up Johnson County, but I shouldn't have to leave my community. And we don't have an operator yet anyway, so that means it's not going to be first. And what makes a healthy community? Not really a YMCA. What makes a healthy community as kids are growing up or born is fresh food and vegetables.
You
food.
have 1 minute, ma'am.
You know, not a dollar store. We got so many dollar stores. You know, sure, I go there sometime, but mainly they really don't have what you want, what you really need for health-wise. So I just wanted to state that, let you know how I feel and how the community probably feels too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? I would offer the same offer for those who are in support. If there are others here who are in opposition, whether you spoke or not, if you would like to stand and show your opposition, you're welcome to do so at this time. All right. Thank you. Every vote counts. Amen. All right. So we are going to close the public hearing and now open it up to the commission. Commissioner Walker.
Well, for the audience's benefit, we had a lengthy discussion, which if you want to and you can't sleep, you can go home and probably watch a rerun of it tonight. It highlighted the need to either move forward or not at this particular time because of something that I don't have the capacity to explain to you. And as was said, there's not many people in the country that would know, but it's called new market tax credits, and that we have to do something now if we're going to take advantage of them, which is a cost benefit to this project. But apart from that and the benefit of that, moving this project forward is an opportunity, again, to do something in what we have decided is the 635, east of 635 urban corridor, where we all know that for the most part, very little is happening. Now, I've stated publicly my belief that corporate America doesn't want to invest in a community where there are people of color, poor people. They don't, and the law protects them in that capacity for the most part, and it takes the opportunity to receive heavy incentives to get a business to come to this food desert, the urban core. There ought to be a law, is what it ought to be. You know, you shouldn't be able to build all your properties out in South Johnson County, where there's a higher rate of affluency, and not have some reciprocal obligation to invest in another area. But it's about money, and money is more important to, you know, corporate America, it would seem. So rather than go on I'm going to make a motion to approve the resolution to exercise options to purchase property necessary to build the Healthy Campus project and to enter into contracts for associated pre-construction architect and engineering cost in an amount up to $2 million. Having done that, I want to be clear, this project just takes another step. Down the road, Commissioner-elect Burrows, Commissioner-elect or Mayor-elect, this commission, they're going to have to keep evaluating as this project goes on whether it's viable. But we need to take this step today to keep it viable. So, having said that, that's my motion.
There was a second, yeah.
Thank you. It's a motion and a second. Commissioner Markley.
So as Commissioner Walters appropriately put it, this is irrelevant today because it's my month to be at the end of the roll call. So if you haven't noticed, I'm the last one to vote, which means everything kind of passes or doesn't by the time it gets to me. So I'll put it like this. It's true. So if the majority of this commission wants to move this forward, I don't have a problem with that. What I will say is that I would look to staff to schedule time as quickly after January 8th as possible for us to have a more in-depth discussion about how the ultimate cost, not this $2 million cost necessarily, but the ultimate cost of this project fits into our long-term budget planning. We've done a lot of work as a commission to plan both current year budgets and to look at our long-term planning. And these costs have not been figured into that planning. So I think it's important for us to talk about that before we're stuck on another date where we have to take a quick vote.
Thank you, Commissioner Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think Commissioner Markley's correct. You know, we have 3-on-3s. We had some time to talk about it. Today we had a meeting and we found out it's $1.3 million more than what we anticipated. And there is no doubt that we need a grocery store down here, and that's what we have to do, Hal, is we have to make the steps forward to make it work. But after we purchase this property, before we move forward, we need to make sure that we have a signed contract, not a wishful think we're going to do this. And then, after it's all said and done and this project goes forward, I want to see local contractors do the work.
Thank you. Commissioner Murguia.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd echo Commissioner Markley's comments. And a lot of the other comments that were made here tonight in regard to access to fresh food and a healthy lifestyle, this is my concern. There is no grocery provider. Currently, the unified government does not have a grocery tenant. There is no legal binding contract with any provider to occupy that grocery space and provide groceries. Traditionally, every economic development deal that we do up here at the unified government, you have to have tenants in order to have incentives. So I would tell you, with all the expenses that we have within the unified government, I am reluctant to spend $2 million on the hopes that a grocery store provider will sign a deal. So I am absolutely an advocate for a grocery store in the Northeast. I don't think it's an unrealistic expectation to have a deal signed with a grocery store provider prior to spending that $2 million. I feel very strongly about that. That's the way we've consistently done business up here at the unified government in the past. So I would not be in favor of spending the $2 million without a grocery store provider in hand.
Thank you. Commissioner McKiernan.
I'm going to also echo that I totally agree with Commissioner Markley that there's a lot of work that needs to be done yet. And so my second is to move this project forward, but before I would approve a final development agreement, I would have to see it and study it, and it would have to make sense for all of us to commit to that development agreement. But because this moves us forward and gives us some time to reach that signed agreement with a grocery store provider, and because it puts us on track towards new market tax credits, I think it's the right thing to do to take this step today. But before it's all said and done, we have to make sure that the ultimate deal and the development agreement that is created is the smart move for not only downtown, but for all of Wyandotte County.
All right. Commissioner Philbrook.
I agree with what you just said, sir. I also would like to say that I believe that it actually shows that we are willing to put some more, I know I hate to say this, money into the game, but we have to show that we're willing to move forward to put the $2 million in so we can create the picture that there are other people willing to give us grants on, or money, not grants, but to give us bonding on. And so without that information, they're not going to do it. So, you know, either we move forward or we stall. So I'm for moving forward.
All right. Before we vote, I just want to say a few words. Obviously, I've asked my staff a number of times in the last 4 years if I could have picked a more difficult signature project for my administration, and they said no. Grocery stores are very difficult in urban areas. We know that. We've built them. We've built 6 grocery stores in the last 8 years. But in every place, the further east it is, the more subsidy that's been required by the unified government. Building a full-service recreational facility, I believe our kids deserve a first-class, world-class facility with aquatics. The number 2 cause of death among urban children, accidental death, is drowning, because there simply aren't facilities in urban America to teach kids how to swim. This checks a lot of boxes on the Healthy Communities Wyandotte wish list. It's also a huge economic engine and economic opportunity, which is why we've had over $6 million committed from the philanthropic community to move this project forward, and why, as we've talked to allocation holders for New Markets tax credits, they're very excited about the joint program of not just a grocery store and not just a community center, but the 2 being built together. It's really a terrific project. It has taken a long time, and it has been very difficult. This step is important. I do believe it fits into the master plan of our long-term financial range. We had committed about $500,000 of financing for this 5 years ago, and I think that this additional $1.3 million is a heavy haul. And I think the question that we need to ask, and that this commission will need to continue to answer as we move forward, is, are we prepared to actually spend money in the urban area? We've spent money all over this county on entrepreneurial vision, $20 million out west of the Legends for 400 acres without a single tenant, but a belief that it was possible. And we invested in urban area, and what we've seen at the Legends has been transformative for our entire community. A $1.3 million investment is significant, particularly in the financial situation that we're in, additional to the $500,000. So it's a full $1.8 million capital annual investment. I think the Northeast deserves it. It's not enough to do a $150,000 master plan if we're not willing to put money behind it to actually invest in the amenities that the community is asking for. We did a full service public engagement in this room asking people, what do you want? They wanted a community center, they wanted a grocery store, and we have an opportunity to move this forward. The New Markets tax credits are critical. The signing of the LOI with the grocer is critical, but it's all moving down the road. It's on track, and I think we have an opportunity to do something special for downtown. Downtown is everyone's downtown. Every community deserves a thriving downtown. This will be the largest capital investment in downtown in 2 generations, and I'm very excited about the opportunity to have led it this far, and I am turning it over to the next administration, and hopefully they will continue to move it forward and get it across the finish line. So with that, I'll call for a roll call.
Roll call: Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
No.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye. See, I told you.
The vote is 9-1. That motion carries.
All right, I would add my vote to that, and I just want to say it's 10:15. I intend to milk every possible minute from my next 2 commission meetings, so just plan on, I have 2 left, so I'm going to get my money's worth. We are adjourned.